Hello and welcome to Got Your Fanfiction. Today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Naruto Trained in Spirit Realm with Hogoromo. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
A boy named Naruto Uzumaki lived in the busy village of Konoha. He was the son of Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, and Kushina Uzumaki, his spouse. However, Naruto led a lonely and neglected life in spite of his distinguished family. Despite their love, Naruto's parents had to devote all of their attention to his two younger siblings, Menma and Mito, who inherited the powerful chakra of the Nine Tails. From the moment Menma and Mito were born, it appeared as though Naruto had vanished from view. His siblings were praised as the village's future guardians, and his parents seldom had time for him because they were constantly attending to their needs. Growing up without the warmth of his family's love, Naruto was constantly looking for approval and attention from other people. He took on the role of class clown, playing practical jokes and attempting to draw attention to himself, but all he achieved was derision from his peers. Tears filled Naruto's eyes as he lay in his tiny, dark room one fateful night. Wondering why his parents couldn't love him as much as they loved Menma and Mito, he gazed at the moon outside his window. He had no idea that this night would be different because his life was about to change due to an unexpected visitor. Naruto was in a huge, ethereal place inside his subconscious. A figure in robes, exuding an unearthly aura, stood in front of him. It was none other than Hogoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of the Six Paths. The sage said, "Naruto Uzumaki," in a voice full of kindness and wisdom. "Who are you?" stammered Naruto, wide-eyed and confused. "I am Hogoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of the Six Paths," he answered. Naruto's eyes filled with tears as he gazed at the sage. "I have watched your life unfold, young one, and I am deeply troubled by the neglect you've endured." With empathetic eyes, Hogoromo asked, "Why did they do this to me? Why don't they love me like they love Menma and Mito? Your parents have been burdened by the responsibility of the Nine Tails chakra within your siblings. They see it as their duty to protect the village, but in doing so, they have overlooked the most important duty of all, to love and cherish their children. Is there anything I can do?" Naruto asked, wiping away his tears. Hagoromo grinned and said, "Yes, Naruto, there is. The soul within you is special, and it has the power to change the world. You must learn to harness this power and show your parents the true essence of love." Naruto nodded as he felt a surge of resolve. Hagoromo reached out and said, "I'll do it. I'll make them see that I'm more than just a vessel for the Nine Tails." The Nine Tails herself, Kurama, materialized at his side as a strong presence. With a surprising amount of sincerity, Kurama, who had long resented Naruto for putting it away, said, "I've watched you grow, Naruto, and despite my initial hatred, I can't help but admire your spirit. I'll help you unlock your potential." Weeks passed, and Naruto was determined to close the distance between himself and his family. With renewed resolve, he made the decision to diligently train in chakra control under the guidance of the Sage of Six Paths. Naruto would get up early every morning and travel to a remote training area tucked away in the forest. There, starting with the leaf-sticking exercise, he worked on the fundamentals of chakra control. He forced himself to adhere to the leaves strewn across the ground by concentrating his chakra into the soles of his feet. Although the process was initially frustrating, Naruto's resolve never wavered. He progressed to the vertical tree climbing exercise in the afternoons. Using only his fingertips infused with chakra, he scaled tall trees and clung to them. Determined to become an expert at this skill, he forced himself to aim higher and higher. Additionally, Naruto used a calm pond to practice the water walking exercise in the evenings. By learning to evenly distribute his chakra across his foot soles, he was able to walk on the water's surface without sinking. It required a careful balancing act between control and focus. Naruto couldn't help but feel proud and accomplished as his abilities grew. Even though he was aware that this was only the beginning, he was making progress toward his objective every day. The Sage of Six Paths appeared in Naruto's dreamscape once more, shocking him as he lay in bed one night. Naruto grinned, feeling validated. "Naruto," the sage said softly, "your progress is impressive. You are proving that your soul is indeed strong enough to master the Nine Tails' power." The sage nodded gravely and said, "Thank you, sage. I won't stop until I've earned my family's respect. There is one more step you must take on your journey. I will create a blood clone of you to replace your life in Konoha temporarily. This clone will live as Naruto Uzumaki, attending the academy, forging bonds, and facing the challenges of being a ninja. Naruto's eyes went wide with shock. But why, Sage? Hogoromo Otsutsuki said, this clone will be your proxy, and when the time is right, you will return to your true life. Your absence will allow you to concentrate on your training without interruptions, and it will also give your family a chance to see the potential within you. Realizing the importance of this choice, Naruto inhaled deeply. The sage nodded and held up his hand, causing a whirling whirlpool of chakra to appear in front of them. I trust your guidance, Sage. Please help me create the clone. A flawless, exact replica of Naruto appeared from the chakra. The sage said, this clone will need your memories, emotions, and experiences, and then infused Naruto's essence into the clone. Naruto watched as the clone assumed his form and resolutely turned to face him. He will carry your hopes and dreams, and he will represent you in Konoha. He seemed to be looking at a mirror image of himself, a second opportunity to prove himself to his family. The sage said, remember, Naruto, this is a temporary arrangement. Your true journey awaits, and when the time is right, you will return. As the clone emerged from the vortex, Naruto nodded solemnly, acknowledged the clone as his proxy, and got ready to start his next training phase. Now that the blood clone of Naruto was in place and living in Konoha as Naruto Uzumaki, the real Naruto continued to train under the Sage of Six Paths. Naruto became more sensitive to the ancient and potent energies within himself as his chakra control improved. One day Naruto experienced a sudden burst of energy while meditating in the ethereal mindscape. The sage was responsible. Hogoromo Otsutsuki had determined that it was time for Naruto to meet a remarkable person who could further inspire him and impart wisdom. The surroundings of Naruto changed in an instant. He was standing in the middle of a verdant forest with towering trees that seemed to reach the sky. There was a lot of chakra in the air, and Naruto felt as though two extremely strong beings were present. Two men emerged from behind a massive tree. One had long white hair and a severe expression, while the other had shorter, spiky black hair and a more laid-back manner. Hashirama Senju and Tobirama Senju, the fabled founders of Konoha, were instantly recognizable to Naruto. Naruto was astounded by his sight. He had grown up hearing tales of these heroes and reading about them in history books. Excitement and respect filled his heart. The first Hokage, Hashirama, smiled warmly at Naruto. Hello there, young one. I am Hashirama Senju. The second Hokage, Tobirama, greeted them with a nod. And I am Tobirama Senju. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. It's an honor to meet you both. Naruto stumbled in amazement. With a kind chuckle, Hashirama touched Naruto's shoulder. The honor is ours, Naruto. We've heard about your journey and the path you've chosen. The Sage of Six Paths has guided you well. Naruto's curiosity got the better of him. Why are you here? What can I learn from you? Hashirama said, Naruto, I will train you in the art of Senjutsu, the Sage Mode. This power will allow you to tap into the natural energy of the world, enhancing your strength, speed, and perception to incredible levels. It's a power that only a few can master. Tobirama continued, Senjutsu is not just about strength, but balance. It requires you to connect with nature and find harmony within yourself. This training will teach you not only to harness immense power but also to understand the true essence of life. Naruto nodded, his resolve growing stronger. I'm ready to learn, Hashirama Senju. I'll do everything I can to make things right and protect my village. Hashirama grinned, pride shining in his eyes. You have the spirit of a true shinobi, Naruto. Let's begin your training. Naruto's quest for self-improvement continued after he successfully learned the Shadow Clone Jutsu under Hashirama Senju's tutelage. It was now time for him to learn a new skill, the art of manipulating water. Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage and a well-known expert in water-based jutsu, would serve as Naruto's mentor to help him with this endeavor. Tobirama outlined the significance of becoming proficient in this elemental manipulation. Water is a versatile element, Naruto. It can be gentle as a stream or destructive as a raging tsunami. Learning to control it will greatly expand your arsenal of jutsu and make you a more versatile ninja. The training started at a remote training facility by a lake. Naruto needed to connect with the calm beauty of the natural world in order to perform water manipulation. The first thing Tobirama taught Naruto was how to use chakra control alone to extract water from the lake into a single container. Naruto, accompanied by a lone shadow clone, carefully channeled his chakra while concentrating on the lake's surface. His initial attempts were awkward and only made little splashes. But Tobirama helped him along the way, stressing the importance of having exact control over his chakra. As Naruto and his clone practiced non-stop, the days stretched into weeks. Tobirama kept a close eye on Naruto, and his control greatly improved. At this point, he was able to extract water from the lake, shape it into a sphere, and suspend it in midair. Tobirama gave a nod of approval. Good progress, Naruto. But now, you must take the next step. Shape the water into various forms to understand its malleability. As instructed by Tobirama, Naruto started experimenting with water shaping. He used his chakra-infused water to create protective barriers, sharp blades, and complex water dragons. His shadow clone imitated every motion, giving Naruto insightful feedback. Naruto's proficiency with water manipulation increased quickly as the training went on. He was now able to develop a wide range of water-based defenses and attacks. Although he had impressive control over the element, he was aware that more was needed for true mastery. It was time for the next stage of training, Tobirama decided. Naruto, you've made excellent progress, but there's more to learn. Water manipulation isn't just about controlling water, it's about understanding its properties, such as its fluidity, adaptability, and ability to adapt to its surroundings. You need to learn to harness these qualities fully. Naruto and his shadow clone started practicing underwater under Tobirama's supervision. They discovered how to breathe with the oxygen infused with chakras in the water, which enabled them to remain underwater for long periods of time. Naruto found that his bond with the water was strengthened when he was in close proximity to it. Naruto improved his methods over the next few weeks. In order to simulate the force of crashing waves, he produced enormous water surges and used surface manipulation to completely hide their existence. He was able to manipulate water tendrils with ease because his control had become so accurate. Tobirama was finally pleased with Naruto's development following 3 months of rigorous training. You've come a long way, Naruto. You now possess a solid foundation in water manipulation. Remember that mastering an element is an ongoing journey, but I have no doubt you'll continue to improve. Sweating profusely but feeling proud of himself, Naruto thanked Tobirama for his advice. I won't stop here, sensei. I'll become a master of water-based jutsu and use it to protect my village and those I care about. Naruto was prepared to tackle earth manipulation, a new elemental challenge, after mastering water manipulation. Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage and an expert in earth-based jutsu, would serve as his mentor during this stage of his training. Naruto's earth training was conducted at a calm training area close to the foot of a majestic mountain. Hashirama started off the lesson by clarifying, earth is an element of stability and resilience, Naruto. Mastering it will grant you the power to shape the battlefield, defend against attacks, and create formidable barriers. But, like water, it requires a deep understanding of its properties. Knowing that this would be another important phase in his development as a ninja, Naruto nodded intently. Naruto started by concentrating on his chakra and shaping it to communicate with the ground. His first attempts at handling pebbles and small rocks were awkward, causing the ground to tremble and the rocks to scatter wildly. Hashirama watched Naruto struggle and offered advice. Earth manipulation requires a calm and steady flow of chakra, as if you're becoming one with the earth itself. Start with small, controlled movements. Naruto nodded and kept honing his control with the aid of his shadow clone. He started raising pebbles into the air, stacking them, and even building basic barriers and walls gradually but steadily. Naruto's control got better over the course of the weeks. Hashirama made the decision to test him further. Naruto, it's time to work on larger-scale earth manipulation. Try creating a clone with me and combine your efforts to shape the landscape. Together, Naruto and his mentor created shadow clones and used them to control the earth. They created hills, trenches, and even tunnels beneath the training ground. Naruto was astounded by the strength of their combined efforts and realized that earth manipulation could be used for both defense and offense. Hashirama introduced Naruto to the idea of wood release, a potent Kekkei Genkai that combined earth and water manipulation, as his proficiency with earth-based jutsu increased. Naruto was keen to learn, despite the fact that it was a sophisticated technique. He was able to learn the basics of wood release more rapidly thanks to his training in both water and earth manipulation. Naruto underwent arduous and demanding training over the course of several months. Because of his prior proficiency with the shadow clone jutsu, he was now able to create the shadow clones with ease. He had little control and a lot of chakra to spend, so the shadow clone jutsu was a huge help. Naruto, who had become more resilient both mentally and physically over these months, expressed his sincere gratitude to Hashirama. Sensei, your guidance has been invaluable. I'll continue to train and improve so that I can protect my village and those who matter to me. For Sasuke Uchiha, another young ninja, the day the Sage of Six Paths had first encountered Naruto in his ethereal mindscape was extremely significant. Sasuke had been battling his own problems and burdens, just as Naruto had experienced feelings of abandonment and loneliness. Sasuke found himself in front of Hogoromo Otsutsuki, the Sage of Six Paths, in a similar dreamlike haze. His dark eyes, which were a mix of curiosity and doubt, met the sage's kind gaze. With a note of defiance in his voice, Sasuke questioned, "Who are you?" Hogoromo, who could feel the turmoil inside the young Uchiha, smiled softly. "I am Hogoromo Otsutsuki, known as the Sage of Six Paths. I've been watching over you, Sasuke." Sasuke arched an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Watching over me, why?" With profound wisdom in his eyes, Hogoromo said, "I've seen the pain and suffering you've endured, Sasuke, the loss of your family, your desire for power, and your thirst for revenge." Sasuke's eyes grew icy, his anger and the tragedies of his past rising to the top of his mind. "What do you care about my pain? What can you do about it?" The wise man replied, "I can offer you guidance and the opportunity to change your destiny. Just as I've seen potential in Naruto, I see potential in you." Curious, Sasuke asked cautiously, "What do you want from me?" Hagoromo stated, "I want to help you find your path, a path that doesn't lead to darkness and vengeance. I can teach you to harness your power and use it for the greater good." Sasuke thought about what the sage had said, intrigued but cautious. His heart ached from the hurt of his past, and he yearned to break free from the destructive and hateful cycle that had engulfed his clan. Sasuke consented to receive training from the Sage of Six Paths during multiple discussions in the ethereal mindscape. He learned the art of chakra control, just like Naruto, and became proficient in exercises like the water walking exercise, vertical tree climbing exercise, and leaf sticking exercise. Sasuke's abilities improved and his relationship with the sage strengthened over the course of the weeks. He discovered how to use his chakra to become a more powerful ninja by unlocking his inner potential. Sasuke had the same sense of purpose and resolve to turn his life around as Naruto had. Unbeknownst to them, Sasuke and Naruto were traveling in parallel, each with their own mentors and challenges. Their destinies were inextricably linked because the Sage of Six Paths had recognized the greatness that lay within them both. The mysterious presence of Madara Uchiha led Sasuke Uchiha into a different dimension. Here, Sasuke was to receive rigorous training in the art of fire release, a cornerstone of the Uchiha clan's heritage, amid a barren landscape of swirling black flames and shadows. With his Sharingan glowing menacingly, Madara described the significance of learning fire release in this unsettling world. "Sasuke, fire is the essence of our clan's power. It represents our determination, our resolve, and our ability to consume everything in our path." The weight of his clan's past and his own ambition for power was evident in Sasuke's eyes. He was committed to maximizing the fire-based jutsu of the Uchiha. Sasuke started the training by learning how to control and summon flames. He was forced to accept the darkness all around him in this bizarre dimension. His initial efforts were hesitant, producing only sparks that died after sputtering. But Madara was a tenacious teacher. He showed Sasuke how to use his chakra to start the fire and molded the black flames with ease as he demonstrated the technique. He stressed the importance of seeing the flames as an extension of his will, as if they were an integral part of who he was. Sasuke spent weeks practicing non-stop in front of the ethereal black flames. His growing mastery was demonstrated by the Inferno, which became his crucible. He was gradually able to summon controlled fireballs, similar to the Uchiha fireball jutsu. Madara gave a contented nod. "You're making progress, Sasuke. But remember, the flames are an extension of your emotions. To wield them effectively, you must learn to control not only the fire but your own inner turmoil." Sasuke continued to hone his skills after realizing the importance of Madara's remarks. He demonstrated his increasing skill by learning to form the black flames into elaborate designs like phoenixes and serpents. Every action was mirrored by his shadow clone, who was always present in this dimension and offered insightful commentary. Madara introduced Sasuke to more complex Uchiha fire jutsu as the training progressed. Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu, the Great Fireball Technique, and the powerful Amaterasu, black flames capable of destroying anything in their path, were all taught to Sasuke. Sasuke's confidence skyrocketed and his control over the black flames became formidable. But Madara warned him about the consequences of having such authority. The flames can both protect and destroy, Sasuke. It's up to you to determine how you'll wield them. Under Madara's tutelage, Sasuke improved even more. He discovered how to control the temperature of his flames, transforming them into either subtle warmth or searing infernos. He even practiced using the black fire to create lethal projectiles with his kunai and shuriken. After 5 months in this alternate reality, Sasuke had mastered fire release to an unprecedented degree. Now, his resolve and newly discovered control were reflected in the black flames, which were an extension of himself. Madara was pleased with Sasuke's development. You've come a long way, Sasuke. Your mastery of the black flames is a testament to your resolve. But remember, power is a double-edged sword. It's how you wield it that defines you. With his Sharingan reflecting the unsettling black flames, Sasuke nodded. I won't let this power consume me. I'll use it to protect those who matter to me. Sasuke found himself talking more about the long-standing problems that had been brewing inside of him as his training in lightning manipulation with Izuna progressed. In addition to learning jutsu, the lightning-infused training grounds served as a place for him to face the ghosts of his past. After a particularly hard training session one evening, Sasuke made the decision to tell Izuna about the inner turmoil he had been carrying for years. With a mixture of vulnerability and resolve in his eyes, he took a seat. Sasuke said, Izuna, there's something I need to talk about, his voice a little heavy with emotion. Izuna looked at him sympathetically. Go on, Sasuke, I'm here to listen. After inhaling deeply, Sasuke went on. You see, in my world, I've always been overshadowed by my family. My twin sister, Rin, was hailed as a prodigy from a young age, and my elder brother, Itachi, was a genius ninja. They were both praised, while I felt like an afterthought. He stopped as the painfully clear memories of his early years returned to him. My parents concentrated on Rin and constantly praised Itachi for his achievements. I was like a ghost in their eyes, ignored and neglected. It made me feel insignificant, like I had no place in the clan. Izuna listened intently, empathy shining in his eyes. Neglect and the feeling of insignificance can be powerful motivators, Sasuke. They can drive you to prove your worth. With his Sharingan whirling with emotion, Sasuke nodded. That's why I've been training so relentlessly. I wanted to become powerful, to make them acknowledge me, to make them see that I'm not just in their shadows. Izuna touched Sasuke's shoulder in a comforting manner. Your desire for recognition and your journey to master your abilities are driven by the shadows of your past. But remember, true strength comes from within. You must find your own path, independent of the expectations of others. After taking in Izuna's words, Sasuke understood that his quest was about more than just learning jutsu, it was also about discovering who he was and overcoming the ghosts that had been haunting him. Sasuke kept up his rigorous training regimen over the coming weeks, but he now carried a fresh perspective on who he was and why he was doing it. The lightning that blazed through him represented not only his accuracy and quickness but also his resolve to overcome his past and shape his own future. Determined to get over the shadow of his past, Sasuke continued to channel his emotions into his training under Izuna's guidance and his own inner resolve. The lightning rushing through him represented not only his accuracy and quickness but also his unwavering determination to overcome his background. As Sasuke developed his lightning manipulation, he started to interpret it as a representation of his resolve to overcome the darkness his family had cast over him. He used his newfound strength to unleash his jutsu during training sessions, with each lightning strike serving as a declaration of his independence. Sasuke confided in Izuna once more during a particularly intense training session. Izuna, it's not just about the recognition anymore. Rin and Itachi overshadowed me in every aspect. They excelled in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and even academics. It felt like I couldn't measure up in any way. Izuna nodded, realizing how deeply Sasuke was struggling. Feeling overshadowed in every aspect of your life can be overwhelming, Sasuke. But remember, you have your own unique strengths and potential. Don't define yourself solely by their achievements. Channeling his frustration into his jutsu, Sasuke unleashed a particularly powerful lightning strike, causing his Sharingan to flare. I'll prove to them and to myself that I'm not just an afterthought. I'll master my own path and create my legacy. In order to compete with his fiercest rival Tobirama Senju, who created the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Izuna began teaching his own jutsu, the Lightning Clone. Sasuke studied the nuances of the Lightning Clone Jutsu under Izuna's tutelage. To ensure that it could be shaped into a stable and sentient clone, they started by perfecting his control over lightning chakra. This procedure turned out to be more difficult than Sasuke had first thought. Months passed while Sasuke diligently honed the jutsu. In order to give the clone some semblance of consciousness, he practiced creating it and concentrated on giving it lightning chakra. The clones were initially unstable and broke apart before they could fully develop. Izuna guided Sasuke while keeping an eye on his development. Creating a clone is one thing, Sasuke, but imbuing it with your chakra and consciousness is another. You must establish a deep connection with the clone to ensure its stability. Sasuke continued to practice after absorbing Izuna's lessons. He began to meditate for extended periods of time in an attempt to establish a close relationship with the clone he was trying to build. With every effort, his Sharingan, a symbol of his resolve, seemed to shine brighter. After practicing for many hours, Sasuke experienced a breakthrough one fateful day. In addition to being stable, the clone he summoned obeyed his mental commands. It resembled him, a perfect replica infused with a blazing lightning chakra. As he showed Izuna the lightning clone jutsu, Sasuke's enthusiasm was evident. "I've done it, Izuna. This is the lightning clone jutsu." As Sasuke's clone demonstrated a level of awareness and control that exceeded their expectations, Izuna watched in wonder. "Impressive, Sasuke. Now, let's work on the electrifying part." They discussed the complexities of giving the clone a deadly electrical energy burst that would be released when it was dispelled. This aspect of the jutsu necessitated accuracy and meticulous chakra calibration. Sasuke had accomplished his objective after weeks of honing the jutsu. The lightning clone jutsu was perfected, creating a powerful clone that would shock the dispeller with electricity when it was dispelled. In addition to the lightning clone jutsu, Izuna started teaching Sasuke the lightning cable jutsu. Sasuke and Izuna collaborated for weeks during which they trained diligently. Among the many difficulties they encountered were making sure the cable could endure the stress of battle and perfecting the disconnection mechanism. Sasuke practiced non-stop, calling forth his lightning clone and creating a mental bond between them. The electrifying form of the clone appeared to pulse with anticipation. Sasuke and his clone developed a closer bond with each attempt, enabling them to exchange sensory data in addition to chakra. After weeks of hard work, Sasuke and Izuna finally made progress. A glistening, lightning-charged cable appeared between Sasuke's and the lightning clone's hands as they parted ways. Their resolve was demonstrated by the connection, which was both real and lethal. In order to test the jutsu, Sasuke used the cable to mentally command the lightning clone to move in a sharp, crackling whip-like motion. It tore like a piece of paper across the rocks around it, leaving a path of devastation in its wake. Izuna gave a nod of approval. "You've done it, Sasuke. The lightning cable jutsu is a powerful addition to your arsenal." As he looked at the deadly weapon they had made together, Sasuke experienced a wave of pride and achievement. The lightning cable jutsu represented not only his proficiency with lightning release but also his inventiveness and will to push the envelope of what was conceivable. Naruto continued his journey under Hashirama Senju's guidance while Sasuke worked with Izuna to further develop his mastery of lightning-based jutsu. Naruto was prepared to move on to the next stage of his training, elemental control and the complex art of Mokuden, the wood release, after he had mastered earth manipulation and the fundamentals of wood release. Naruto was led by the fabled first Hokage and Mokuden master Hashirama through a calm training area surrounded by tall trees. Naruto's next challenge was set against the stunning backdrop of the forest. "Naruto," Hashirama said, his eyes warm with wisdom, "Mokuden is a rare and powerful Kekkei Genkei, a combination of earth and water release. It represents life and vitality. To master it, you must connect with the essence of nature itself." Naruto gave a determined nod. He realized that he would have to attune his chakra to the harmony of the forest in order to complete this even more difficult phase of his training. The training for elemental control started. Feeling the life force of the trees and the water flowing in the nearby stream, Naruto concentrated on his chakra. He was given instructions by Hashirama to align his chakra with the surroundings and shape it into a harmonious combination of water and earth. The earth cracked and water splashed wildly as a result of Naruto's initial clumsy attempts. Hashirama saw his difficulties and offered advice. "Mokuden requires a deep connection with nature, Naruto. You must feel the life energy around you and let it flow through you." Naruto kept practicing under Hashirama's patient direction. He gradually attuned his chakra to the essence of nature and started to discover that delicate balance. He could feel the water running, the trees swaying, and the forest's very life force. As the weeks stretched into months, Naruto's influence over Mokuden grew. He acquired the skill of building wood structures, ranging from basic branches to elaborate vines. He realized that Mokuden gave him the ability to give his creations life, and he was astounded by the power of life at his fingertips. As Naruto's control over wood release increased, Hashirama looked on proudly. You're connecting with nature, Naruto, and that's the essence of Mokuden. It's the power to create and nurture life. Naruto experienced a profound sense of harmony with the world around him as his relationship with nature grew stronger. He was now a steward of life itself, not just a ninja. After that, Hashirama taught Naruto more complex Mokuden jutsu, such as the capacity to control trees and build enormous wooden structures. Naruto was astounded by the scope of his newly acquired powers and understood that he could reshape the battlefield in a way that had never been possible before with Mokuden. Naruto underwent intense and illuminating training over the course of several months. With Mokuden's power at his disposal, he felt a deep obligation to defend the village and the environment that he had grown to love. Hashirama was pleased to see Naruto's development. You've come a long way, Naruto. Mokuden is a gift, and it's up to you to use it wisely to protect the balance of life. Naruto nodded, resolve shining in his eyes. I'll become a Hokage who not only protects the village but also the world. With Mokuden, I have the power to do both. As Naruto continued to learn Mokuden under Hashirama Senju's tutelage, he was going to explore a technique that Hashirama had kept under wraps, the wood clone jutsu. By fusing his own chakra with the essence of life, this advanced jutsu would enable Naruto to use wood release to create clones of himself. Hashirama guided Naruto farther into the peaceful forest, out of sight. The tall trees in this remote clearing appeared to be whispering historical secrets, as though they were also knowledgeable about the wood clone jutsu. Naruto, Hashirama started with a quiet voice, the wood clone jutsu is a secret technique passed down through generations of the Senju clan. It allows you to create clones with the essence of life itself. These clones are more resilient and possess the power of wood release. Naruto's eyes grew wide with excitement. He was aware of the legendary status and combat potential of the wood clone jutsu. It was a unique and significant chance to learn it directly from the first Hokage. Hashirama shaped his chakra and connected it with the nearby trees to start demonstrating the jutsu. Wooden copies of him came to life, each embodying the forest's vitality. They were living creations that were just as real as the surrounding trees, not just illusions. As Hashirama's wood clones moved with purpose and fluidity, Naruto marveled. This is incredible, Hashirama-sensei. I've never seen anything like it. Hashirama gave a nod. Indeed, Naruto, wood clones are not only resilient but also versatile. They can use wood release jutsu and provide support in battle. I'll teach you how to create them, but remember, it requires a deep connection with nature. As Hashirama described the nuances of the jutsu, Naruto listened intently. He concentrated on his chakra and let it meld with the forest's life force. The ground beneath him moved as he tried to make his first wood clone, and a wooden duplicate of himself appeared. Standing in front of Naruto, the wood clone exuded vitality. Naruto was awestruck by the experience and felt a strong bond with this wood and chakra creation. Hashirama gave advice. Wood clones can be used strategically, Naruto. They are not only resilient in battle but can also heal you or your allies when necessary. In his diligent practice of the wood clone jutsu, Naruto created and destroyed clones, sensing the natural rhythms of each creation. He became proficient over time and was able to easily create several wood clones. Hashirama grinned contentedly as he watched Naruto's development. You have a natural affinity for Mokuden, Naruto. With the wood clone jutsu, you possess a powerful tool that will serve you well. Naruto's training with Hashirama Senju entered a phase where he would discover more of the fabled first Hokage's secrets in wood release, now that he had a firm grasp on the knowledge of the wood clone jutsu. Hashirama was ready to unveil some of his collection's most guarded jutsus as they ventured farther into the forest. Naruto, Hashirama said with historical weight in his eyes, Mokuden is a versatile and formidable Kekkei Genkei. Today, I will share with you some of the advanced wood release techniques passed down through only a few of the Senju clan. Naruto nodded enthusiastically, prepared to take on any obstacles that might come up. As though nature itself recognized the importance of this training, the old trees surrounding them rustled with anticipation. First, Hashirama showed off the wood release, 4-pillar prison technique. Using a few hand seals, he conjured up enormous wooden pillars that rose out of the earth, enclosing him in a cage for protection. The wood's strength and tenacity were evidence of Mokuden's power. Naruto observed intently, taking in the method. It's like an impenetrable fortress. How do I learn it? Hashirama led Naruto through the necessary chakra control and the complex hand seals. 4 wooden pillars emerged from the ground as Naruto tried the technique, enclosing him safely in their protective embrace. He personally experienced the jutsu's power and steadiness. Hashirama gave a nod of agreement. You have the affinity for this jutsu, Naruto. With practice, it will become even more formidable. As they continued their training, Hashirama revealed another secret jutsu to Naruto, the wood release, wood-locking wall. Hashirama amazed him by conjuring a huge wall of interlocking wooden logs that formed an impregnable barrier. Once more, Hashirama carefully walked Naruto through the chakra control and hand seals. The wooden logs transformed into a powerful wall as Naruto tried the jutsu, totally obstructing his path. At Naruto's advancement, Hashirama grinned. This jutsu can be used for both defense and containment. It's a powerful asset in battle. Eager to add these skills to his expanding toolkit, Naruto absorbed the information. As Naruto's bond with Mokuden grew, the old trees witnessed this transfer of knowledge. Hashirama taught Naruto a sophisticated healing technique at the end of their training session called the wood release, healing touch. This jutsu enabled Naruto to channel the essence of life within himself in order to speed up healing, heal wounds, and regain vitality. Naruto used the healing method on himself, experiencing Mokuden's calming energy as it revitalized his body and soul. With pride, Hashirama looked at Naruto. Mokuden is not just a tool for battle, Naruto. It's a gift that can heal and nurture. Use it wisely to protect and care for those you hold dear. There was a feeling of recognition and curiosity between Naruto and Sasuke as they stood in the bizarre world. It was a singular meeting, arranged by the mysterious figure of the Sage of the Six Paths. The silence had to be broken by Naruto, who spoke in an intriguing tone. Sasuke, I've heard so much about you, but we've never really met. With his Sharingan eyes fixed on Naruto, Sasuke nodded. It's strange, isn't it? I feel like I know you somehow, even though we've never crossed paths in the real world. The Sage of the Six Paths spoke, his presence echoing throughout their mindscape, interrupting their conversation. Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, you both have extraordinary destinies that are deeply intertwined. I've brought you here to offer you a gift. Sasuke and Naruto exchanged perplexed looks. Curious, Naruto asked, a gift? A glowing light surrounded them as the sage nodded and held up his hand. Naruto sensed energy flowing through him, beginning in his left eye, within that ethereal glow. He felt a new power within himself, the Six-Tomo Rinnegan, as he blinked. After receiving the Six-Tomo Rinnegan, Sasuke also experienced a change in his right eye. His distinct ancestry was demonstrated by the eye that contained the power of both the Sharingan and the Rinnegan. The Sage of the Six Paths clarified, these eyes represent the convergence of the Uchiha and Senju legacies, combining the powers of both clans. They will grant you abilities beyond imagination, but they also come with great responsibility. Understanding the seriousness of this gift, Naruto and Sasuke exchanged a knowing glance. Extraordinary power and the accompanying responsibility had defined their fates. With the memory of their encounter ingrained in their minds, they returned to their respective training grounds as the light faded. Sasuke had the Six-Tomo Rinnegan in his right eye, but Naruto now had it in his left. Naruto and Sasuke returned to their respective training grounds with a renewed sense of strength and purpose following their mysterious encounter with the Sage of the Six Paths and the exchange of the Six-Tomo Rinnegan. They were more committed than ever to developing their skills to the fullest. But their encounter had a lasting effect, giving them a sense of unity and destiny. It appeared as though a bridge had been constructed to link their disparate trajectories. Naruto and Sasuke experienced a subtle change in reality one day while they were still training in their respective dimensions. Their surroundings appeared to become hazy, and before they knew it, they were in a shared dimension, where the lines separating their separate training grounds had vanished. Sasuke and Naruto exchanged startled looks upon realizing that space no longer separated them. Their newfound connection was reflected in the training ground they stood on, which was a combination of their two worlds. Two figures, Madara Uchiha and Hashirama Senju, the two fabled rivals who had once influenced the course of the shinobi world, stood at the center of this combined realm. Madara was the first to speak, her smile bewildered. It seems fate has a way of bringing together those with extraordinary destinies. Naruto Uzumaki, Sasuke Uchiha, welcome to a dimension where your paths converge. Hashirama gave a nod of approval. Here, you will have the opportunity to train together, to draw strength from each other's abilities, and to unlock the full potential of your newfound powers. Sasuke and Naruto exchanged a resolute glance, prepared to seize this exceptional chance. It was an opportunity for them to work together, share knowledge, and stretch the limits of their skills. With intense glow in his Sharingan eyes, Madara took a step forward. Naruto, I will assist you in mastering fire release. With your 6-Tomo Rinnegan, you possess incredible potential, and I will help you unlock its true power. Eager to learn from one of the greatest fire users in history, Naruto nodded in appreciation. He was aware that this partnership would challenge him. Naruto and Sasuke combined the power of their Rinnegan and Mokudan to hone their skills as their training began. As their worlds merged, they developed a special synergy through sparring, technique sharing, and pushing one another past their comfort zones. Specifically, Naruto and Madara's training in fire release was at an all-time high. Naruto quickly mastered fire-based techniques thanks to Madara's skill and his perseverance. Naruto learned to control fire with previously unheard-of proficiency, and flames erupted from his hands with precise control. Every wind gust, leaf rustle, and swirling vortex held the promise of mastery over this element in the merged dimension where Naruto and Madara were solely focused on Naruto's wind release training. The training area they were in was a mirror of the wind's strength, a place where the air itself seemed full of possibilities. Madara, a seasoned wind release expert, stood in front of Naruto, anticipation shining in his Sharingan eyes. He recognized the importance of Naruto's potential and was committed to assisting him in fully utilizing the skill of wind manipulation. Madara started by exploring the nuances of wind release. Naruto, wind is an element that embodies both speed and precision. To master it, you must learn to become one with the very currents that shape our world. Naruto nodded, his unwavering resolve reflected in his 6-Tomo Rinnegan. He realized that this training was profound. It was about connecting with the element's essence rather than merely learning techniques. Naruto started his training under Madara's supervision. He learned how to shape his chakra into the shape of the wind by starting with the basics. He closed his eyes and felt the currents dancing around him and the slight changes in air pressure. His first wind release jutsu, a razor-sharp crescent of wind that cut through a distant tree trunk so effortlessly that it appeared as though the air itself had turned into a blade, was released with a controlled breath and a series of hand seals. Madara watched intently. You have a natural affinity for wind release, Naruto, but remember that it's not just about raw power, it's about finesse and precision. Naruto diligently kept up his practice, honing his elemental control. He developed the ability to produce strong gusts that could deflect projectiles and impede the movements of his enemies, as well as slicing winds that could cut through several targets at once. Naruto's proficiency with wind release improved over the course of the weeks. He was able to increase his speed by adjusting the air currents, which gave him unparalleled agility. He was able to control the wind with extreme precision, making it an extension of himself. With the help of Madara's years of experience and insightful advice, Naruto was able to push the limits of what wind release could accomplish. They pushed the boundaries of the art, and Naruto met the challenge head-on with unwavering resolve. Naruto realized that this training was a crucial part of his ascent to fame. He was prepared to face any challenge that lay ahead, with the 6-Tomo Rinnegan serving as his guiding force and wind release firmly under his command. Naruto's bond with the element grew stronger as they trained. The wind appeared to obey his orders with ease, demonstrating the harmonious coexistence of element and master. He developed into a powerful force on the battlefield as well as a wind release master with every day that went by. Naruto's quick mastery of wind release impressed Madara. The young Uzumaki's innate affinity for the element and his unwavering commitment to honing his craft were evident. After laying this groundwork, Madara thought it was time to teach Naruto some of his own wind release methods. Naruto, Madara said, I'm going to teach you some of my own wind release jutsus. These are techniques I've developed over the years, and they harness the full potential of the element. Naruto nodded enthusiastically, eager to learn everything Madara was willing to share. Using a hand gesture toward a far-off tree, Madara demonstrated his first technique, which he named Gale Palm. He unleashed a controlled blast of wind with a concentrated chakra surge, causing the tree's branches to sway and its leaves to rustle. Mastering Gale Palm requires precise control over the direction and intensity of the wind, Madara said. It's an excellent technique for long-range attacks and disrupting an opponent's balance. Naruto kept a close eye on the hand seals and chakra manipulation needed to carry out the technique. Then he tried it himself, experiencing the thrill of his chakra changing into a powerful wind gust that hit a nearby boulder and scattered pebbles everywhere. Madara gave a nod of approval. Well done, Naruto. You have a knack for grasping these techniques quickly. The next jutsu that Madara taught Naruto was called Vacuum Sphere. It involved forming a sphere of extremely compressed air that could be used offensively or defensively. Madara gave an example by creating a tiny ball of air between his palms and then shooting it toward a far-off object with a wrist flick, breaking it as it hit it. The vacuum sphere is a versatile technique, Madara clarified. You can use it to deflect projectiles, create barriers, or even launch sneak attacks. By carefully practicing the vacuum sphere technique, Naruto learned how to precisely control the air to produce the compressed sphere. He eventually managed to launch a sphere that broke a tree stump into splinters, but it took patience and time. Madara shared more complex wind release jutsus with them as their training progressed. By mastering the whirlwind tempest, Naruto was able to conjure a whirling wind vortex that could trap and confuse adversaries. Additionally, he became proficient in the jet stream palm, which emphasized precise blows with a slender wind blade. As the days stretched into weeks, Naruto's control over the element improved and his skill set of wind release techniques grew. Madara was proud to see his pupil take the wind's essence and claim it as his own. Naruto, Madara stated, wind release is not just about power, it's about adaptability and creativity. Use these techniques wisely, and they will serve you well. While Izuna and Tobirama were pouting in the corner at one another, Sasuke was receiving wood release training from Hashirama Senju while Naruto was being trained in this. It had been years since the fateful encounter in the merged dimension between Naruto and Sasuke. Both had developed tremendously, their abilities refined by constant practice and unrelenting willpower. Their fates were inextricably linked, and they had come to represent the Uzumaki and Uchiha legacies. The tension between them was evident as they stood on the battlefield. Sasuke had perfected his Mokudan and fire release with his own 6-tomo Rinnegan, while Naruto had perfected wind release with his own. They would be put to the test and forced to reach new heights in a battle unlike any other between rivals. The approaching conflict was given an unsettling backdrop by the wind rustling through the trees. Sasuke and Naruto met eyes, their stares brimming with respect and rivalry. Both fighters moved at breakneck speed as their spar started without a word. As evidence of his command of the element, Naruto launched a flurry of wind release attacks. Sasuke was forced to dodge and use his own strategies as wind blades cut through the atmosphere. Sasuke was just as strong. His fire release engulfed the battlefield in flames, adding a chaotic element to their battle, while his Mokudan enabled him to construct tall wooden structures that absorbed Naruto's attacks. When Naruto's shadow clones entered the battle, they all used intricate wind release combos that overpowered Sasuke. With Naruto's clones moving in perfect unison to launch coordinated attacks, it turned into a stunning demonstration of strength and cunning. But Sasuke was not to be outclassed. By anticipating Naruto's movements with his Sharingan, he was able to precisely dodge and counter. He was able to manipulate the battlefield by building wooden barriers and delivering devastating blows thanks to his control over Mokudan. Sasuke was forced to flee when Naruto unleashed his signature move, the Spiral Cyclone. With a single, concentrated breath, he created a massive tornado of wind that tore through the battlefield. In response, Sasuke unleashed a huge wooden warrior known as the Wooden Golem, which took the brunt of Naruto's blow and charged forward, sending shockwaves through the earth. Their rivalry pushed them to their limits as the two fighters engaged in an unrivaled level of intensity. Wind release and Mokudan clashed in a spectacular show of strength and strategy, turning the field into a battlefield of elemental combat. Panting and drenched in perspiration, Naruto and Sasuke stood apart as the first phase of their fight came to an end. They both had a great deal of respect for each other's skills after their spar, which had been a real test of strength and skill. After catching their breath, Naruto and Sasuke were far from done. Their battle demonstrated their mastery of their respective elements and demonstrated how much they had grown over the 5-year time skip. They nodded in agreement and went back to fighting, this time using all of their newly developed skills. With the help of the 6-tomo Rinnegan, Naruto was able to summon Rasengan, a tremendous wind and chakra vortex. He threw the sphere at Sasuke, and it crackled with power. Rocks and trees tumbled in the wake of the shockwave caused by the attack's force. With his Sharingan blazing, Sasuke retaliated using a move he had perfected during the time jump. He turned into a blazing phoenix by releasing a torrent of fire release chakra that surrounded him. He flew through the air on wings of fire, dodging the wind release, Rasengan's trajectory before launching a volley of flaming fireballs in return. Naruto's eyes precisely followed Sasuke's every move. He created a series of elaborate hand seals, calling forth a huge wind barrier as the fireballs rained down on him. The flames were instantly put out when the barrier absorbed them. Naruto quickly caught up to them, and his 6-tomo Rinnegan blazed with power as he used his special ocular ability, which caused a gravitational pull that interfered with Sasuke's flight. When the fiery phoenix faltered, Naruto took advantage of the situation and used the devastating wind release, Rasengan, to slam Sasuke into the ground. Sasuke moaned as he struck the ground, but his determination did not waver. He ensnared Naruto and created a barrier of living wood by using his Mokuden to call forth towering wooden roots from the ground. It demonstrated how far he had come in understanding Hashirama's legacy. But Naruto could not be restrained. He shattered the wooden prison with a burst of chakra-enhanced strength, sending splinters flying everywhere. Then he called forth a massive tornado that engulfed Sasuke and himself. Neither of them could get out as the tornado swirled violently. In response, Sasuke used powerful chakra to ignite his Mokuden, causing the wood to become engulfed in blazing flames. Naruto's powerful windstorm clashed with the flaming wooden structures that whirled inside the tornado. The battlefield turned into a whirlpool of wind and fire as the two forces collided, demonstrating the strength and resolve of these competing shinobi. Naruto and Sasuke kept pushing each other's boundaries as the battle went on. Throughout the time skip, they had expanded rapidly, each mastering special techniques that suited their individual advantages. The competition that had characterized their travels was now a demonstration of their ability to control the weather. The battle between Naruto and Sasuke had intensified. They unleashed even more powerful abilities, elevating the battle to a whole new level even though the tornado of fire and wind still raged around them. In a flash of insight, Naruto activated the dormant Mokuden, the wood release, a hidden chakra reserve inside of him. The ground beneath him started to change as the fierce battle continued. A huge wooden structure with branches that reached far above the tornado was formed by the emergence of roots. Sasuke watched in wonder and expectation, his Mangekyo Sharingan blazing with intensity. An unexpected turn of events that demonstrated the extent of Naruto's development during the time skip was the appearance of his wood release. It was amazing how well Naruto controlled the wood release. He skillfully moved the branches of the tree, each one stretching out to attack Sasuke. Sasuke had to rely on his Sharingan's enhanced perception to avoid the unrelenting assault as the wooden limbs moved with amazing speed and accuracy. Sasuke was aware that he needed to react just as forcefully. With a single glance, he unleashed black flames that devoured everything they came into contact with. His Mangekyo Sharingan was incredibly powerful, and he used one of his most powerful techniques, the Amaterasu Blaze Control. Naruto reacted by directing wind release chakra into the branches as the flames rushed toward his wooden construction. When the black flames came into contact with the strong wind gusts, they faded and sputtered, making Sasuke's Amaterasu useless. Naruto kept pushing forward, throwing wind release-infused branches at Sasuke, who skillfully sidestepped and retaliated with his own Mangekyo Sharingan power, the Tsukuyomi. A nightmare world of illusions engulfed Naruto, trying to subdue his will. Naruto confronted his worst anxieties and insecurities inside the Tsukuyomi. But he had the will to resist because of the strength he had acquired over the years, his unwavering spirit, and the recollection of his journey with his friends. Naruto broke the Tsukuyomi with a burst of chakra and a strong will, coming out of the encounter unharmed. He increased the intensity of his wood release attack, his eyes blazing with resolve. The enormous tree uprooted itself and charged at Sasuke at breakneck speed. Seeing the impending danger, Sasuke called forth his Susanoo, a powerful, ethereal warrior. A titanic battle broke out between Naruto's wooden titan and the Susanoo, who was dressed in a cloak of dark flames. Naruto and Sasuke descended from the intense clash of elements and ocular techniques to engage in a battle that was as raw and intimate as their rivalry itself, hand-to-hand combat, with the battlefield scarred and their chakra reserves running low. The Susanoo and the enormous wooden structure vanished, restoring the battlefield to its original condition. With focused and determined expressions, both shinobi landed gracefully on the ground. The rustling of leaves and the sound of their footsteps were all that remained after the fires had been put out and the wind had stopped howling around them. With a sudden burst of speed, Naruto charged forward, his 6-tomo Rinnegan still in action. With the dexterity of an experienced fighter, Sasuke sidestepped his precise blow. The result of years of practice and training, their movements were quick and accurate. In response, Sasuke delivered a string of fluid blows that were all precisely timed. They traded blows quickly as Naruto's quick reflexes allowed him to avoid or deflect the blows. It was a combat dance that demonstrated their deep understanding of one another's fighting techniques. With the density and hardness of wood, Naruto's wood release, which was still present in him, enabled him to intensify his blows. His fists turned into hammers, delivering powerful blows. Sasuke barely escaped the devastating blows thanks to his Mangekyo Sharingan's enhanced perception. They performed flips, acrobatic maneuvers, and deft dodges as the fight grew more intense, producing an unexpected symphony of combat. The ground beneath them was scarred by their ferocious interactions, and the rustling leaves appeared to celebrate their skill. With his Sharingan spinning, Sasuke changed his strategy and launched the Chidori Sharp Spear. Lightning chakra engulfed his hand, turning it into a lethal weapon. With lightning speed, he swung at Naruto, aiming the electric blue chakra spear at Naruto's heart. Naruto responded just as quickly, using his enhanced vision to guide his reflexes. With a precisely timed counterattack, he sent sparks flying as their hands clashed in response to Sasuke's attack. The battlefield was rocked by the force of their collision. With all of their remaining strength, Naruto and Sasuke engaged in a symphony of blows, kicks, and counterattacks. Even though they were hurt and bruised, their will to win was stronger than before. As these two competitors pushed themselves to the limit, their bodies hurting but their spirits unwavering, the world watched in wonder. It was a fight that went beyond their rivalry and demonstrated their development, fortitude, and unwavering shinobi bond. Following their spar, Naruto and Sasuke simultaneously destroyed their blood clones with a chakra blast. They discovered how they were treated by their families. Naruto and Sasuke came to a mutual understanding of the importance of this occasion. They had been given their blood clones' abilities, their mentors' knowledge, and their journey's experiences. Their lives would be shaped by this gift. They both stopped attacking, and their eyes met in a moment of mutual recognition, bringing the battle to a sudden halt. They had developed not only as individuals but also as a group, an unmatched combination of power and knowledge. Naruto and Sasuke put an end to their fight with a final nod. They were now equals, and their rivalry was characterized by a deep awareness of one another's abilities and strengths rather than just competition. Unnoticed by those around them, they returned to the world they had left behind as the dust settled and the wind slowed. Naruto and Sasuke returned at the age of 11, their destinies irrevocably entwined, their memories enhanced, and their futures full of boundless possibilities, while the world remained unaware of the revolutionary battle that had occurred. The memories that had flooded Naruto's mind as he returned to the real world were of his blood clone's interactions with his parents, interactions that were a painful reminder of the neglect and exclusion he had endured during his early years. Naruto could see his parents, Minato and Kushina, smiling and laughing while adoring his siblings, Menma and Mito, in the vivid memories. He had never really experienced the warm embraces, park picnics, and family get-togethers. Rather, he had frequently found himself on the outside, longing for the love and acceptance that his siblings freely received. There was one memory in particular that was painfully clear. Naruto's clone had observed from afar as Minato knelt next to Menma and assisted him in tying his shoelaces on the sunny and bright day. As they got ready to go on a family vacation, Kushina had playfully ruffled Mito's hair while grinning broadly. In the shadow of the cozy family dynamic that he couldn't see, Naruto had observed from a distance. The clone's memories showed a sharp contrast even when eating. The Uzumaki family would get together at the dinner table and tell stories about their days while their laughter filled the room. It was obvious that Naruto was not present during those special times. It seemed as though his presence had been erased from their lives and he had never really belonged at that table. Naruto felt a deep sense of sadness rising inside of him as he dug deeper into the memories. He remembered innumerable times when he had been abandoned and turned to the Ichiraku family's company and the ramen shop for comfort. He had found a sense of family there, a surrogate family that had given him the acceptance and warmth he had so desperately needed. Sasuke's journey through the forgotten recesses of his past was agonizing as he descended into the memories of his blood clone. He found himself reliving moments that had deeply scarred his young heart, aching with the weight of abandonment, as the vivid memories came to life. In one memory, he saw Itachi being trained in the Sharingan arts by his father, Fugaku, with their eyes locked in a bond that completely excluded Sasuke. In sharp contrast to his lack of interest in Sasuke, Fugaku was clearly proud of his oldest son's development. On the training grounds, the young Uchiha had been abandoned and was having difficulty catching up. Makoto, his mother, was shown adoring Rin, his twin sister, in another unpleasant memory. Makoto would give Rin lots of loving words and gestures while grinning and laughing. Unnoticed, Sasuke stood close by, his own longings for a mother's love unmet. He was overcome with a sense of insignificance and felt a strong desire for the comforting embrace of a family. Birthday parties served as a painful reminder of how alone he was. Itachi and Rin's birthdays were celebrated in style, and they were showered with gifts and well wishes. Sasuke's own birthday, on the other hand, was largely ignored. He felt like a shadow in his family's eyes because he was not acknowledged on that momentous day. Sasuke experienced a range of emotions as he navigated these memories, including sadness, anger, longing, and frustration. Unquestionably, he had been neglected and overshadowed, and the scars they left were still raw. However, Sasuke discovered a glimmer of resolve deep within his heart. These memories served as a source of strength in addition to being painful reminders of the past. They served as the motivation for him to keep going, challenging him to demonstrate his value and establish himself as a shinobi with unmatched power and determination. Sasuke returned to the world with an unwavering resolve, having gained a deep understanding of the suffering that had molded his formative years. He was aware that he would shape his own destiny as a shinobi without depending on his parents' acceptance or recognition. Though they no longer defined him, the memories of overshadowing and neglect would always be a part of him. Sasuke was committed to overcoming his past, becoming a shinobi who would create his own legend, and making sure that the suffering he had gone through would serve as a source of strength rather than weakness. Sasuke and Naruto were standing in a calm, peaceful location far from the world's curious gaze. The weight of those experiences hung between them, and they were still plagued by memories of their blood clones. The silence was broken first by Sasuke, whose voice was a mix of vulnerability and reflection. Naruto, those memories, they were painful to relive. The neglect, the overshadowing by my parents, it was all there. With compassion in his eyes, Naruto nodded. I know what you mean, Sasuke. My clones' memories showed me the same kind of neglect from my parents. It hurt more than I thought it would. They acknowledged the emotional scars from their pasts and had a moment of understanding. It was a bond that went beyond their rivalry and was the result of their shared suffering. He continued, but you know, Naruto, those memories also revealed something important. They showed us how strong we've become, despite everything. We've overcome our pasts, and we're not defined by the neglect we suffered. Naruto's gaze remained fixed as he replied, you're right, Sasuke. Those memories, painful as they were, are a testament to our resilience. We've both grown immensely, and we're no longer seeking validation from our parents. Our strength comes from within. With a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips, Sasuke nodded in agreement. Our mentors, the training, the experiences we've had, it's all shaped us into who we are today. We've gained incredible knowledge and abilities. It's up to us to use them for our own paths and goals. As he said, exactly, Sasuke. Our destinies are ours to shape. We'll rise above our pasts and become shinobi who are known for our own accomplishments, not just the shadows of neglect. Naruto's resolve was evident. Once bitter rivals, the academy students now stood as friends who had come to a very intimate realization. They were prepared to help one another on their paths to self-awareness and development because they shared an understanding of each other's suffering. Naruto inhaled deeply and started talking about his personal experiences, his eyes hazy with conflicting feelings. You know, Sasuke, it wasn't just my parents who neglected me. It was also my siblings, Menma and Mito. They believed they were above everyone else, that the Nine Tails chakra somehow made them special. With a furrowed brow, Sasuke listened carefully. They bullied you, didn't they? With a hint of resentment in his voice, Naruto nodded. Yeah, they did. They called me the soul, and the leftover. They made it clear that they thought I was beneath them. It was like I didn't belong in my own family. Sasuke clenched his fists and his eyes hardened. That's cruel, Naruto. I can't believe they treated you that way. Naruto smiled a little, resignedly. It was tough, but it also made me who I am. I grew up with a fierce determination to prove myself, to show everyone that I'm not just the leftover, or the failure they believed me to be. Sasuke found himself talking about a difficult part of his own family life as he and Naruto carried on their conversation. As he started talking, there was a trace of vulnerability in his voice. Naruto, it's not just the neglect from my parents. My twin sister, Rin, she used to bully me too. Of course both of our siblings are like that, sighed Naruto. A shadow moved across Sasuke's face as he nodded. Yeah, Rin was always seen as the prodigy of our generation, and I was the failure. She made sure I knew it, too. He went on, recalling the unpleasant memories with a softer tone. She'd taunt me, call me weak and worthless. She'd say I'd never live up to the Uchiha name, and she made it clear that she believed she was superior to me in every way. As he listened, Naruto's face changed to one of empathy. That's tough, Sasuke. I can't imagine what that must have been like. Sasuke continued, looking away as he recalled the Uchiha clans and the rest of his family's lack of concern. It wasn't just Ren. The rest of the family, the clan, they mostly ignored me. It was like I was invisible to them. No one seemed to care about my struggles or my accomplishments. When Naruto realized that both of them had experienced various forms of abuse and neglect within their own families, his heart ached for his friend. Sasuke, I'm so sorry you had to go through all of that. It's not fair. With a determined gleam in his eyes, Sasuke nodded. It's in the past now. I've grown stronger because of it, and I'll continue to prove myself, not just to them but to myself. Naruto smiled encouragingly. You've already come so far, Sasuke. And you've got friends who believe in you, friends who know you're anything but weak or worthless. As they strolled through the village, Naruto and Sasuke's conversation turned to more lighthearted subjects as they talked about their academy classmates. Talk turned to Shikamaru Nara, who was renowned even within the Nara clan for his extraordinary intelligence. Naruto laughed. Shikamaru's something else, isn't he? He's got a brain that's always working, and he's not afraid to show it. Sasuke gave a nod of agreement. Yeah, he's a genius, no doubt about it. But he's also a bit of a slacker when it comes to putting in effort. He prefers to do the minimum required to get by. Naruto smiled. Lazy, but brilliant. I've seen him pull off some amazing strategies with minimal effort. Sasuke grinned. True, but it's important that we don't underestimate him. He may act lazy, but when he's motivated, he's a force to be reckoned with. Naruto's face became contemplative. You're right, Sasuke. We should be careful about how we behave around him. He's not one to be taken lightly. As Naruto and Sasuke carried on talking, Sakura Haruno, another of their classmates, came up. Hey, Sasuke, have you noticed how Sakura's been acting around you lately? Naruto started, laughing. Sasuke, who was obviously aware of Naruto's point, arched an eyebrow. Yeah, it's hard not to notice. She's been persistent. Naruto gave a cheeky smile. More like relentless. She's been fangirling you like crazy, Sasuke. I mean, she practically asks you out on a date every time she gets a chance. With a note of frustration in his voice, Sasuke let out a sigh. Yeah, it's getting a bit overwhelming. I appreciate the attention, but it's like she's on a mission or something. Naruto teased his friend with a laugh. Well, I can't blame her. You're pretty cool, Sasuke. Although there was a tiny, barely noticeable smile on his lips, Sasuke rolled his eyes. Thanks, Naruto, but it's not just about being cool. I wish she'd focus more on her studies and training instead of chasing after me. Naruto gave a nod of agreement. Yeah, I hope she realizes that there's more to being a ninja than just having a crush. The animated chatter of their classmates greeted Naruto and Sasuke as they entered the academy. Kiba Inuzuka stood out among them due to his blustery manner and self-assured swagger. With a cunning smile, Naruto gave Sasuke a gentle shove. Speaking of persistent, have you seen Kiba lately? He's been trying to be the alpha male of our class. Sasuke looked at Kiba, who was chatting animatedly with a small group of students, and grinned. Yeah, he's been quite the show-off. What's he up to now? Naruto laughed. He's been trying to ask your sister, Rin, out on a date, but he always seems to fail spectacularly. Sasuke raised an amused eyebrow. Yay, it's annoying. They watched Kiba's most recent attempt covertly. With a charming smile, he walked confidently toward Rin. Hey there, Rin, you know, there's this great new ramen place in town. How about you and I check it out together? Rin gave a startled blink and then a firm but courteous no. No thanks Kiba, I have better things to do other than do out with you. For a brief moment, Kiba's confidence faltered, but he soon regained it. No worries, just thought I'd ask. Let me know if you change your mind. Sasuke shook his head amusedly, and Naruto couldn't help but smile. He never gives up, does he? Rin sighed as Kiba stepped aside and turned to face her brother, Sasuke, who was now coming closer. What do you want, loser? Sasuke smiled slightly, comfortingly. Nothing. Once again, Naruto couldn't help but tease Sasuke. Looks like being the alpha male isn't as easy as Kiba thought. Sasuke gave a quiet laugh. No, it's not, but at least it's keeping him on his toes. The village had changed significantly in the 2 years since Naruto and Sasuke had discussed the academy. The 13-year-old shinobi had become more experienced and stronger every day. Their experiences shaped them into strong people by leaving their mark on their skills and perspectives. Reflecting on their journey, Naruto and Sasuke found themselves back at the training grounds on a bright morning. They recalled their experiences with strong opponents as they worked on different strategies. With a gleam of resolve in his eyes, Naruto paused. Remember when we caught Zetsu spying on our training? That was a close call. Recalling the fierce struggle that had taken place, Sasuke nodded. Yeah, he thought he could gather intel on us, but we showed him what we're capable of. Sealing him off with a planetary devastation and placing him in a different dimension was a smart move. Naruto grinned. That'll teach him not to mess with us. We've come a long way since then, and the village is safer with threats like Zetsu out of the picture. Sasuke looked about him intently. The village has changed, Naruto. We've changed. It's a good thing. Sasuke went on to say, the new Zetsu we have has been feeding us useful intel about the Akatsuki. It seems our decision to create a replacement was the right move. Acknowledging the success of their strategic decision, Naruto smiled. Definitely. It's like having an insider on the inside. We've learned about their plans, their movements, and even some of their weaknesses. It gives us an edge. Sasuke gave a nod, and it's not just about protecting the village. It's also about preventing the Akatsuki from causing more harm. The more we know about them, the better we can counter their actions. Their conversation highlighted how crucial intelligence gathering is in the shinobi world. Naruto and Sasuke had gained a useful tool to keep one step ahead of their enemies as the Zetsu replacement was working covertly inside the Akatsuki. Naruto's face became serious. We can't afford to underestimate the Akatsuki. They're a formidable group with dangerous individuals. But with the information we've gathered, we can plan our moves more strategically. They quietly performed exceptionally well in their studies and training at the academy, obtaining good grades that put them in the upper echelons of the student body. They were able to blend in rather than stand out, though, because their actions were precisely calibrated to remain just under the radar. Naruto and Sasuke were talking about their development one day after getting their most recent exam results. Naruto looked at his paper and smiled. Our plan seems to be working perfectly, Sasuke. We're doing well without attracting too much attention. Sasuke gave a nod of agreement. Exactly. We're not aiming to be the top students or the center of attention. Staying just above average ensures we're not singled out, but we're still making progress. Naruto laughed, and it keeps everyone underestimating us. Let them think we're not a big deal. It gives us an advantage. Sasuke grinned. The less they notice us, the more we can focus on our training and the real challenges that lie ahead. Sasuke acknowledged the significance of Naruto's remarks by raising an eyebrow. Corruption is a cancer that spreads, especially among those in power. It's not just in the villages. It's in the very fabric of our society. Naruto nodded, his voice full of frustration. Exactly. The gap between the powerful and the powerless keeps widening. The villagers suffer, the shinobi get caught up in political games, and the real issues get swept under the rug. Sasuke concurred. The ninja world is built on a foundation of secrets, lies, and backdoor deals. It's no wonder corruption thrives. The system benefits those at the top, and everyone else is left to fend for themselves. Naruto went on, and it's not just about the villages. The alliances between the nations, the hidden agendas, it's a mess. How can we protect the people when those in charge are more concerned with maintaining their own power? Leaning against a tree, Sasuke looked off into space. Change won't come easily. The corruption is deeply ingrained. But maybe, in our own way, we can challenge it. Make the system more transparent and just. Naruto had a determined look in his eyes. That's the dream, Sasuke. A ninja world where everyone has a fair shot, where strength is measured by character, not political alliances. With a furrowed brow, Naruto revealed yet another alarming fact. Sasuke, Zetsu's information has been eye-opening. It's not just corruption within the village, it's the shady dealings with other nations too. Naruto clarified, Zetsu's intel indicates that other nations, like Iwagakure, are giving missions to the Akatsuki. As Sasuke realized how serious the situation was, Iwagakure collaborating with the Akatsuki. That's a dangerous game. We need to figure out the extent of their involvement and how it affects the balance of power in the shinobi world. With a serious tone, Naruto nodded. Exactly. If the Akatsuki is gaining support from other nations, it could tip the scales, and not in our favor. We can't let them become too powerful. Leaning back, Sasuke considered the ramifications. Our focus has been on internal issues, but it seems like the external threats are just as significant. We need to be vigilant and gather as much information as we can. According to Naruto, if we can uncover the motivations behind Iwagakure's involvement with the Akatsuki, we might be able to prevent a larger conflict from brewing. Sasuke had a determined look in his eyes. We can't let our guard down, Naruto. The Land of Fire's issues are interconnected with the larger picture of the shinobi world. This just got even more complicated. When Naruto revealed yet another alarming fact, his face darkened. Sasuke, we can't ignore the shadow Danzo casts over our efforts. He's been collecting Sharingan from deceased Uchihas for a forbidden technique called the Izanagi. Sasuke's anxiety was visible as his eyes narrowed. The Izanagi, that's a powerful and dangerous technique. It manipulates reality itself. If Danzo is amassing Sharingan for it, it means he's planning something significant. Sighing, and he's proven to be a formidable adversary. He's managed to elude us time and again, and his influence within the village is far-reaching. It's like he's always one step ahead. Frustrated, Sasuke's fists clenched. Danzo has always operated in the shadows, using any means necessary to achieve his goals. If he's pursuing the Izanagi, it could tip the balance of power in his favor. Naruto gave a nod of agreement. We need to be cautious. His motivations might align with ours in some ways, but his methods are ruthless. We can't afford to underestimate him. Why do I have to catch this cat again? This is so boring and useless, Naruto uttered in a bored tone. Later on in the mission office, Naruto sighed as they handed Tora back to the daimyo's wife. Can't believe we're doing this again. Tora must be the most troublesome cat in the entire village. Sasuke grinned. At this rate, we'll know every hiding spot in the village. It's becoming more of a game than an actual mission. Sakura gave an eye roll. At least it's not a dangerous mission. But I can't believe we graduated from the academy just to play cat catchers. The three of them were itching for something more difficult after the umpteenth retrieval mission for Tora. The wish of Team 11 was not ignored. Yamato, an experienced Jonin who had been monitoring their development, saw the young Genin's potential. He concluded that it was time for them to face a more significant obstacle. In order to avoid boredom, Yamato went to the third Hokage, who had been assigning missions during his retirement. Sensing that Team 11 was prepared for a more challenging task, Yamato asked them to take on a C-rank mission. Yamato's request was granted by the third Hokage, who was intrigued by the idea of a new team with promising members. He gave him a mission scroll that described a mission that involved looking into bandit activity on the edge of the Land of Fire. There was a fresh sense of purpose in the air as Team 11 was given the mission. Naruto smiled, his excitement returning. Finally, a mission that doesn't involve chasing cats. Let's show them what Team 11 is made of. Constantly focused, Sasuke nodded his agreement. This is a chance to prove ourselves. Let's make it count. Sakura continued, no more Tora missions. We're Genin now, and it's time for a real adventure. She was looking forward to a more significant challenge. The atmosphere within Team 11 was charged with a renewed sense of purpose as they set out on their first C-rank mission to the Land of Waves. The trio was ready to prove themselves in a more demanding setting because the monotony of Tora missions had given way to a genuine challenge. Sakura couldn't help but become curious as they drove through the twisting roads. She asked the question that had been bothering her, turning to Yamato. Sensei, why is it that some countries, like the Land of Waves, don't have their own ninjas? I mean, every village in the Land of Fire has its own shinobi, right? Sakura's curiosity was understood, and Yamato nodded. That's a perceptive question, Sakura. The presence or absence of ninja villages varies across the nations. While major countries like the Land of Fire, Land of Wind, Land of Water, and others have established ninja villages with their own forces, smaller nations might not have the same resources or need for a structured shinobi system. Sasuke responded, so, the Land of Waves might not have ninjas because they're a smaller country without a village. According to Yamato, exactly. Some countries rely on the protection provided by larger nations, or they might not face the same level of threats that require a dedicated ninja force. Each country has its own unique circumstances and needs. Sakura was still curious, so she asked another question. And why do some countries have cages as their leaders, like the Hokage in the Land of Fire, while others don't? Sakura's desire to comprehend the political climate of the ninja world was valued by Yamato. The title of Kage is typically reserved for the leaders of the 5 major ninja villages: Leaf, Sand, Mist, Cloud, and Stone. These leaders are often the strongest and most capable ninja in their respective villages, responsible for making crucial decisions and representing their people. Always interested in leadership issues, Naruto continued, "So, not every country has a Kage." Yamato gave a nod. "Correct. Some smaller countries might have different forms of governance, and their leaders may not necessarily be ninja. It depends on the traditions and structure of each nation. Having a Kage is a tradition in the major villages and has proven effective in times of crisis, but it's not a universal system." Sakura thought about the details, taking in the intricacies of the ninja world. "So, in the Land of Waves, they don't have ninjas, and they probably don't have a Kage either." According to Yamato, that's likely. But even in countries without ninja villages, there are skilled individuals who may act as protectors or mercenaries. The world outside the major villages is diverse, Sakura, and each country has its own way of dealing with challenges. The smell of the unknown was carried by the coastal breeze as Team 11 ventured farther into the Land of Waves. As the discussion went on, Naruto, who has always been passionate about his ancestry, couldn't help but share a little bit about the Land of Waves. "You know, the Land of Waves used to be home to Uzushiogakure, and my clan, the Uzumaki, were the leaders of that village. They were so strong that they held the title of Kage." Sakura's shocked eyes grew wide. "The Uzumaki, I've heard about them. Weren't they known for their incredible vitality and sealing techniques?" Smiled. "That's right, Sakura. The Uzumaki were known for their strong life forces, sealing jutsus, and their distinctive red hair. They were a powerful clan, and their village, Uzushiogakure, was one of the most formidable in its time." Sasuke, who had been paying close attention, added, "I've heard about Uzushiogakure. They were mentioned in some of the historical scrolls. The Uzumaki were said to be distant relatives of the Senju and rivals of the Uchiha. Their village was destroyed, but their legacy lives on." Naruto acknowledged Sasuke's expertise with a nod. "Exactly, Sasuke. The Uzumaki, Senju, and Uchiha clans were interconnected. We were distant relatives of the Senju, and our rivalry with the Uchiha was legendary. In terms of power, the Uzumaki were on par with the Uchiha and Senju." "How did the Uzumaki become leaders of their own village? Was it because of their strong chakra or something else?" inquired Sakura, who was always curious to find out more. Naruto clarified, "The Uzumaki's leadership wasn't just about their chakra prowess, although that was certainly a factor. They were known for their unwavering loyalty and ability to forge strong alliances. It wasn't just strength that defined them but also their sense of unity and resilience." Sasuke continued, "And the destruction of Uzushiogakure was a significant event. The village fell, but many Uzumaki scattered across the ninja world. Some went into hiding, while others integrated into different villages." Naruto said, "That's true. I guess I'm the last living Uzumaki, and that's why I feel a strong connection to my roots. But the Land of Waves has a history that goes beyond its current state. It's fascinating to think about the powerful clans that once thrived here." The terrain appeared to hold more secrets than Team 11 had expected as they ventured deeper into the Land of Waves. Motivated by the attraction of an anomaly, Naruto, Sasuke, and Yamato approached what appeared to be a typical puddle of water. The oddity was that a puddle was in front of them even though it hadn't rained in weeks. Always on the lookout, Yamato cautiously made his way to the puddle. The air around him shimmered as he leaned in for a closer look, and he fell to the ground as though he had been hit fatally. Both Naruto and Sasuke responded quickly, with Naruto yelling, "Sensei!" while Sasuke looked around for any indications of an impending attack. Naruto and Sasuke were unaware that Yamato had used the substitution jutsu, a deft move that let him switch places with a nearby log. Yamato stood up from the ground a few feet away and watched Naruto and Sasuke, anticipating their reaction. As Sasuke examined his surroundings, his Sharingan briefly came to life. "There's something off here. We need to be careful." Naruto nodded, just as tense. "Yeah, Sensei wouldn't just go down like that. Stay sharp." The demon brothers, Gozu and Maizu, appeared out of the shadows as if on cue. The bigger of the two, Gozu, smiled threateningly. Well, look who stumbled into our little trap." The more reserved brother, Maizu, continued, "We've been expecting you, shinobi. This land is under new management, and we don't take kindly to intruders." Sasuke kept up a front of casualness while giving Naruto a subtle nod. "New management, huh, we were just passing through. No need to cause trouble." With a casual stance, Naruto added, "Yeah, we're not looking for any trouble. Just passing by." The demon brothers looked at each other, doubtful of their seeming innocence. Grumbling, "You don't just pass through the land of waves without permission. The toll for crossing our territory is steep." Playing along, Sasuke shrugged. "Toll, we don't have any money on us, sorry." The demon brothers suddenly charged forward, not realizing how cunning Naruto and Sasuke could be. Together, Naruto and Sasuke executed a precise move that knocked out the demon brothers without revealing the full scope of their abilities. Yamato, who had been watching from the shadows, came out nodding. "Good job, you two. Subtlety is key, especially when dealing with potential threats." Smiled. "Thanks, sensei. But why were the demon brothers here, and why did they set up such an obvious trap?" Sasuke thought about it. "It's strange. This doesn't seem like their usual approach. They're more direct." Yamato entered the discussion and said, "We have to investigate further. There might be more to this than meets the eye." Team 11 was on edge after learning of the demon brothers' trap, but they persisted in their journey as they got closer to Tezuna's house in the land of waves. Tension was in the air, and Tezuna appeared more uncomfortable than ever as they entered the modest home. Sasuke's perceptive gaze never faltered. "Something's not right here. Why did you lie about the threat, Tezuna?" After a moment of hesitation, Tezuna broke eye contact. I couldn't tell you the truth before. The danger here is far greater than just a few bandits. I needed your help, but I was afraid you wouldn't come if you knew the real story." Exasperated, Naruto crossed his arms. "Well, now that we're here, you better spill the truth. What's going on in the land of waves?" With his shoulders hunched over from the weight of the truth he was about to share, Tezuna inhaled deeply. "This land has been taken over by a man named Gato. He's a powerful and ruthless businessman who seeks to exploit the resources of this land for his illegal enterprises. Gato wants to run human trafficking, drug deals, and mine coal. He's turned this once thriving region into a place of suffering." Sasuke's gaze grew strained. "And you didn't think we needed to know this before?" With regret in his voice, Tezuna shook his head. "I was desperate. Gato has spies everywhere, and I couldn't risk them knowing that I had hired shinobi to help us. But I can't hide it anymore. My people are suffering, and they need your help." Yamato, who is usually calm, scowled. "Illegal activities, human trafficking, drug deals, this goes beyond a simple escort mission. Tezuna, why didn't you ask for the village's help or hire more experienced shinobi?" Tezuna exhaled. "I did ask for help, but no one was willing to stand up to Gato. He's too influential, and people fear retribution. That's why I lied about the mission details. I didn't think I could get anyone to help if they knew the truth." Sasuke looked at Naruto, their mutual understanding clear. Naruto said, "So, what's the plan? How do we deal with Gato and help your people?" Tezuna's eyes begged for comprehension. "The key to freeing my people lies in completing the bridge. Gato controls all the transportation, and the only way to break his grip is to finish the bridge. Once it's complete, trade can resume, and we won't be at Gato's mercy anymore." Yamato let out a sigh as he realized how serious the situation was. "Building a bridge won't be easy, especially with Gato's forces against us. We'll need a plan." Tezuna gave a forceful nod. "I have a blueprint for the bridge, and my people are ready to work. With shinobi protection, we can speed up the construction and stand a chance against Gato's tyranny." Sasuke looked at Naruto, expressing their mutual resolve in silence. With a determined gleam in his eyes, Naruto turned to face Tezuna. "We'll help you, Tezuna. We'll finish that bridge and put an end to Gato's reign of terror." Nodded. "But we need to be cautious. Gato won't take kindly to us disrupting his plans. We'll need to strategize and strike at the right moment." Tezuna bowed appreciatively. "Thank you, shinobi. My people have suffered for too long. With your help, we can reclaim our land." As Naruto and Sasuke, seasoned by their experiences, sensed an approaching threat, the tension in the land of waves intensified. They communicated silently, prepared for whatever challenge awaited them, as their instincts took over. Sakura, meanwhile, gave in to her fear because she was still tense after learning about the land of waves. A rustle in the bushes startled her, and she quickly threw a kunai toward the disturbance. A harmless white-coated bunny emerged, much to everyone's surprise. Yamato, ever perceptive, saw what was going on. He whispered, a substitution jutsu, to himself. Before he could alert the others, Tizuna was just missed by a huge blade that swung down from above. Naruto reacted quickly, pushing Tizuna to the ground and lowering himself as Sasuke pulled Sakura down next to him out of instinct. With deadly accuracy, the blade, wielded by the formidable missing nin Zabuza Momochi, cut through the air. Yamato took charge of the situation, his eyes narrowing. He commanded, everyone, get down. After realizing that Zabuza was not to be taken lightly, Yamato's acute senses sensed Zabuza's approach as the blade swept over them. He quickly gave his team some background information. That's Zabuza Momochi, also known as the Demon of the Hidden Mist. A dangerous rogue ninja with a notorious reputation. He's a master of silent assassination and water-based jutsu. Be on guard. Zabuza emerged from the mist, a menacing aura emanating from his massive figure. Anticipating the typical responses of fear and apprehension, he released a significant amount of killing intent. But he was shocked to see how calm Naruto and Sasuke were, not even flinching in reaction. Sakura, however, shook visibly, her hands trembling. Yamato started to perspire a little as he felt the pressure. Zabuza was intrigued by the difference in responses and secretly admired the two young shinobi's tenacity. Naruto's gaze remained fixed on Zabuza as they locked eyes. Equally calm, Sasuke stared back without recoiling. Despite feeling the weight of Zabuza's intent to kill, Yamato was able to remain calm. Zabuza was a little surprised by the stoicism. Impressive. You two don't seem like your typical genin. But let's see how long you can keep that bravado, he said, grinning icily at Naruto and Sasuke. As Zabuza readied himself for his next move, the mist grew thicker and covered him. Yamato gave the team a warning to remain alert after realizing the danger. The outcome of the battle between Team 11 and the infamous missing nin Zabuza would decide the destiny of the Land of Waves. Zabuza moved deftly across the battlefield, but his movements were obscured by the growing mist. With the vulnerable Tizuna as his target, he quickly moved between Team 11's formation. Sensing that Zabuza was in danger, Sasuke pulled out his katana and struck him, but the missing nin exploded into water. Another Zabuza appeared a moment later, trying to hit Sasuke as he was recuperating from his earlier assault. But the illusion was outpaced by Naruto's reflexes. He punched the watery clone hard, sending it flying in droplets. The real Zabuza was slightly alarmed by his opponent's surprising tenacity. He made the decision to adopt a more calculated strategy. He skillfully tricked Yamato into leaving the group by delivering a well-planned blow that knocked the seasoned shinobi into the lake. Zabuza took advantage of the situation and quickly used the water prison jutsu, enclosing Yamato in a ball of swirling water. Yamato couldn't use his wood release techniques in the cramped area. In an attempt to foil Zabuza's strategy, Sasuke threw a windmill shuriken in the direction of the missing nin. As astute as ever, Zabuza sidestepped the approaching missile. But the real danger was in the shadows, where Naruto, a different windmill shuriken, appeared. Zabuza was forced to dodge and inadvertently release the water prison when Naruto skillfully and precisely threw a kunai at him. Yamato was released from his aquatic prison when the water sphere burst. Zabuza maintained his composure in the face of the setback. He taunted, his voice resonating through the fading mist, "Impressive teamwork, but you're still not a match for me." With his eyes fixed on Zabuza, Sasuke shot back, "We're not done yet." Naruto, his resolve unwavering, prepared for the next confrontation. Zabuza chose to intensify the conflict after determining that his initial surprise attacks had not produced the desired effects. As he got ready to use his more powerful methods, drops of water clung to his body. Zabuza used the lake as a battlefield to launch complex attacks by controlling the water. When water clones appeared, they attacked from several directions, but Naruto and Sasuke were able to repel them by moving in unison. After he was released from the water prison, Yamato entered the battle and used his wood release to block Zabuza's water-based attacks. As the conflict dragged on, Zabuza's amazing abilities became increasingly clear. Team 11 remained determined despite the situation's uncertainty being reflected in the foggy battlefield. Yamato's wood release stopped the water attacks, Naruto's agility was unrivaled, and Sasuke's Sharingan followed Zabuza's movements. The team felt a wave of relief as Zabuza appeared to be neutralized within Yamato's wood prison jutsu. But when Tsusenbon pierced Yamato's neck, the silence was broken. He lost control of the jutsu, stumbled, and let go of Zabuza. The missing nin drooped, as if dead. Now weak and straining for chakra, Yamato evaluated the circumstances. He felt for Zabuza's pulse, but it was absent. The demon of the hidden mist had vanished, the toll of the battle taken. Yamato declared, "Zabuza is gone," with a tone that was both relieved and exhausted. He looked over at Tazuna. "Your village is safe now." Tazuna had a serious expression despite being appreciative of the team's help. "I never thought I'd see the day Zabuza would be defeated. Thank you all for your bravery." Tazuna and Team 11 went back to his house together. Tazuna welcomed them inside and introduced them to his family. While his grandson Inari appeared aloof and pensive, his daughter Tsunami smiled warmly as she welcomed them. The abrupt change in his village's destiny was unfathomable to Inari, who was already struggling with the trauma of the recent events and Gato's oppressive rule. "Why did you bring them here, Grandpa? What difference will they make?" he asked Tazuna. Tazuna attempted to console Inari by saying, "Inari, these shinobi risked their lives to save us. They defeated Zabuza, the man who tormented our village for so long." The adults were left to consider the intricacies of the situation as Inari fled to his room, unable to comprehend the extent of the change. Naruto experienced empathy as he watched Inari's response. He's been through a lot. The village has suffered for too long, and change is hard to accept. Sasuke, ever perceptive, continued, "Defeating Zabuza is a significant victory, but the wounds run deep. The people here need more than just a single battle to heal." Hearing what they were saying, Tsunami added, "Inari lost his father to Gato, and the villagers have endured years of oppression. Zabuza's defeat is a step towards change, but it won't erase the pain overnight." Yamato nodded as he recovered from his chakra fatigue. "We need to give them time to rebuild, emotionally and physically." Tazuna sighed, appreciative but weighed down by the hardships of his village. Inari needs time to understand that things can get better. The scars of the past won't fade easily. With a bold declaration, Naruto's voice broke the stillness as the evening descended upon Tazuna's house. "I don't think Zabuza is dead. Not for real." Sasuke, ever the analyst, nodded. "Yeah, it seemed too easy. He's probably still alive." Astounded by their wisdom, Yamato looked at them with a mixture of surprise and interest. "You two caught on quickly. But how do you suppose he survived?" Naruto scratched his head, considering his options. "Well, Zabuza is no ordinary shinobi. He's cunning and skilled in deception. Maybe he used some sort of technique to fake his death." Using his understanding of ninja techniques, Sasuke continued, "Or perhaps he had a contingency plan in place, like a body double or a clone." The mention that Zabuza was still alive sent a chill down Sakura's spine, who had been listening carefully. But how can we be sure? What if he comes back for revenge?" Sakura was reassured by Yamato, the voice of reason in the midst of uncertainty. "We can't let fear cloud our judgment. If Zabuza is still alive, we'll deal with him together. But for now, let's focus on helping Tazuna and his village rebuild." Overhearing their conversation, Tazuna walked over with a serious look. "I hope you're wrong, but I wouldn't put it past Zabuza to cheat death. We'll need to stay vigilant." Team 11 became accustomed to their makeshift quarters as the night went on, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Their instincts told Naruto and Sasuke that the fight with Zabuza was far from over, but they were unable to get rid of the uneasiness. The village was filled with cautious optimism when they woke up the following morning. In order to get his fellow villagers to start the process of repairing their destroyed community, Tazuna rallied them. Eager to help, Team 11 offered their support. While working with the villagers throughout the day, Naruto and Sasuke kept a close eye out for any indication of Zabuza's return. Still in shock from the previous day's events, Sakura took comfort in her teammates' company. Team 11 got together for a makeshift dinner with Tazuna and his family as the sun began to set, marking the end of another day. The village's tenacity in the face of hardship was reflected in the solemn yet upbeat atmosphere. As they ate, the topic of the land of waves, future and the difficulties that awaited them came up. Tazuna promised to honor Team 11's sacrifice by rebuilding his village stronger than before and thanked them for their bravery and selflessness. Ever the optimist, Naruto smiled. "We'll be here to help every step of the way. Together, we'll make sure Zabuza never threatens this village again." With his eyes reflecting his resolve, Sasuke nodded in agreement. "We won't rest until the land of waves is free from tyranny." Sakura felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her, despite her continued caution. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect this village and its people." Team 11 gathered by the lake for their morning training session as the sun rose over the land of waves, illuminating the serene waters with a golden glow. Their diligent sensei, Yamato, had made the decision to teach them the vital skill of water surface walking. Yamato clarified, "Now, this technique is essential for shinobi who need to traverse bodies of water without sinking," in a firm yet upbeat tone. "It requires precise chakra control and focus." With a comforting smile, Yamato turned to Sakura. "All right, Sakura, let's start with the basics. Focus your chakra to the soles of your feet and visualize yourself walking on the surface of the water." Sakura nodded, her eyes shining with resolve. As Yamato had instructed, she closed her eyes and channeled her chakra. She focused on keeping a careful balance between her chakra flow and her movements with every step. Sakura's initial movements were tentative and unsteady as she tried to get her bearings. However, with Yamato's encouraging and patient guidance, she eventually started to sense the subtle changes in her chakra, which gave her the confidence to move more confidently across the water's surface. Yamato exclaimed, "Good, Sakura. You're getting the hang of it, over the calm waters. Keep focusing your chakra and maintain a steady pace." Sakura became more fluid and in control of her movements with every minute that went by. As she glided across the water with ease and a triumphant smile on her face, her confidence skyrocketed. Sakura's tenacity motivated Naruto and Sasuke to keep improving their own abilities. In order to concentrate on their sophisticated chakra control without interruptions, they relocated to a remote section of the lake. They felt the familiar sensation of weightlessness as they walked across the water's surface with practiced ease, channeling their chakra to the soles of their feet. Their years of training and commitment were evident in their fluid and elegant movements. Naruto and Sasuke silently acknowledged each other's advancements as they practiced, occasionally nodding in agreement. Even though they were naturally gifted, they understood that mastery required ongoing practice and improvement. Back at the main training area, Sakura kept getting better while Yamato kept an eye on her. Her chakra control was flawless, and she moved with assurance and confidence. With one last flourish, she leapt gracefully and landed with a victorious smile on her face. With pride in his voice, Yamato praised her efforts. "Well done, Sakura. You've mastered the water surface walking technique." Sakura smiled, her pride at her achievement filling her chest. She had taken on the challenge head-on and triumphed, demonstrating her tenacity and fortitude. Team 11 assembled as the morning sun was at its highest point, their success together boosting their spirits. They were aware that the journey ahead would be difficult, but with each other's encouragement and support, they were prepared to overcome any challenges. Hidden from their teammates, prying eyes, Naruto and Sasuke gathered at their agreed-upon meeting location. Their secret informant, Zetsu, emerged from the shadows, a silent reminder of the secrets they kept. "Zetsu," Naruto said in a quiet but determined voice, "what do you have for us today?" Zetsu wasted no time in providing them with the information they were looking for, his dual-colored face showing no emotion. "Zabuza will be ready for the next battle soon. His injuries are healing swiftly, thanks to his remarkable resilience. However, there is another matter of concern." Sasuke's forehead wrinkled in expectation. "What is it?" With a tone tinged with sinister foreboding, Zetsu disclosed, "Gato, the cunning businessman who controls this land, is planning to betray Zabuza. He sees Zabuza as a liability now that his grip on the village has weakened. He intends to eliminate him and take control of the land of waves for himself." Naruto narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. If Gato succeeds in eliminating Zabuza, it could tip the balance of power in this region. "We can't let that happen." Sasuke gave a nod of agreement. "Keeping Zabuza alive could prove advantageous for us. He could serve as a valuable asset, whether as a spy or an extra ally in battles to come." After deciding on their strategy, Naruto and Sasuke slipped away from their meeting place and headed to a secluded area of the country where their training routine would be hidden from prying eyes. With the weight of the entire world pressing down on them, they triggered their gravity seals, slowing their motion to a crawl. They pushed themselves to the limit of their endurance with every step, push up, and pull up, honing their bodies and skills. Naruto and Sasuke exchanged determined looks as they persevered through the physical strain, their mutual resolve driving their efforts. They were aware that every bit of strength they acquired would be vital in the upcoming conflicts. They let go of their gravity seals after what seemed like an eternity of exhausting effort, and the sudden rush of freedom was thrilling as they accelerated forward with newly acquired speed and agility. As they raced across the terrain, their footsteps hardly made an impression on the ground as they moved at breakneck speed. Their movements were coordinated in perfect harmony, and their bodies moved with fluid grace. Naruto and Sasuke found a secluded section of beach and dove in, their chakra-enhanced feet moving smoothly over the sand. They sparred, exchanging blows with dexterity and grace while their taijutsu techniques flowed naturally. They pushed themselves to keep their composure and balance during battle, testing the limits of their water-walking skills with every strike and counter. Their rigorous training session was accompanied by the steady sound of waves crashing against the coast, a symphony of tenacity and fortitude. Naruto and Sasuke persisted in their unwavering quest for excellence as the sun started to set, creating long shadows over the serene surroundings. They became stronger and more determined to defend the people they cared about with every second that went by. Naruto and Sasuke moved as silently and quickly as shadows as they infiltrated Zabuza's secret lair under the cover of darkness. They found Zabuza and his companion, the mysterious Haku, unconscious and bound, with the accuracy that comes from years of training. Zabuza's eyes opened as they roused their prisoners from their sleep, a look of surprise and suspicion flitting across his face. Beside him, Haku stirred, his face a facade of serene calmness in spite of the situation. With simmering rage in his voice, Zabuza growled, "What is the meaning of this?" With unwavering resolve, Naruto and Sasuke exchanged a knowing look. Sasuke said, "We've come to make you an offer," in a measured but firm tone. Naruto took a step forward, staring at Zabuza's stony face. "We know you're a formidable shinobi, Zabuza. But your time as a rogue ninja is over. We're offering you a chance to work for us." A sneer of contempt curled Zabuza's lips. "Work for you? And why would I do that?" As he described their plan, Naruto's face stayed neutral. "We'll pay you handsomely for your services. 2 million ryo per year, plus any bounties you collect from missions or targets you eliminate. In return, you'll work as our informant and occasional ally." With a piercing gaze, Sasuke moved forward. "It's a fair deal, Zabuza. With your skills and experience, you could be a valuable asset to us. But make no mistake, if you refuse, there will be consequences." With a defiant expression, Zabuza's eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse?" Naruto spoke in an icy, uncompromising tone. "Then you'll join the ranks of our enemies. And trust me, you won't survive long." The weight of their demand tested Zabuza's resolve, and his jaw tightened. He reluctantly nodded his acceptance after a tense moment of silence. "Very well," he complained in a dejected tone. "We have a deal." After reaching a consensus, Naruto and Sasuke freed their prisoners from their restraints, enabling them to stand up. With their alliance formed in the furnace of necessity, Zabuza and Haku exchanged cautious looks. Team 11 persisted in their effort to keep the land of waves safe from Gado's oppression as the days went by and their partnership with Zabuza and Haku grew stronger. They became more resilient and skilled at negotiating the perilous political environment of their surroundings every day. Once again patrolling the bridge on a cool, windy morning, Team 11 was on the lookout for any indications of trouble. Sakura, Yamato, Sasuke, and Naruto all moved with practiced ease, their senses sensitive to even the smallest threat. Naruto raised his voice, low but resolute, as they neared the bridge's halfway point. "I'll stay back here, just in case any thugs try to harass Inari or Tsunami again." Yamato acknowledged Naruto's acute intuition and fast reflexes and nodded in agreement. "Be careful, Naruto. We'll handle things up ahead." Naruto nodded goodbye and sat down comfortably, pretending to sleep while keeping a close watch on the bridge behind him. All of his senses were keen, and he was sensitive to the minute changes in the atmosphere. Soon his attention to detail was called into question. He heard muffled voices, then the distinct sound of raised voices and scuffling. When Naruto opened his eyes, his senses immediately became more acute as he evaluated the circumstances. The calm morning was overshadowed by the menacing presence of two thugs who were cornering Tsunami and Inari, their faces contorted in ruthless determination. Naruto wasted no time in taking action, leaping into the battle with quick, decisive movements. With lightning speed, Naruto closed the gap between himself and the thugs, launching a flurry of accurate blows with his fists. His sudden appearance caught the thugs off guard, and his superior speed and skill proved to be too much for them to handle. Naruto used well-placed blows to incapacitate the two attackers, making them unconscious in a matter of seconds. With a mixture of amazement and appreciation, Tsunami and Inari gazed at him in wide-eyed amazement. As he assisted them in standing, Naruto asked in a worried tone, "Are you okay?" With a shaky voice of relief, Tsunami nodded. "Thank you, Naruto. You saved us." Inari echoed her sentiment, his previous fear now replaced by admiration. "Yeah, thanks. You're amazing." At their words, Naruto smiled, his heart bursting with pride. It was nothing. Just doing my duty as a shinobi. An overwhelming sense of satisfaction overcame Naruto as he escorted Tsunami and Inari to safety. Naruto and Haku, the expert ice user whose elegant movements concealed his lethal efficiency, were locked in combat as the battle on the bridge continued. Naruto's senses were sharpened as he concentrated on the task at hand, and he felt a rush of adrenaline running through his veins with every clash of their blades. Sasuke fought alongside him with equal vigor, his Sharingan burning with resolve as he used his own lightning-fast movements to counter Haku's quick blows. As they worked to defeat their formidable opponent, they formed a formidable duo and collaborated seamlessly. Zabuza, the infamous renegade ninja whose reputation as the demon of the hidden mist preceded him, was Yamato's opponent across the bridge. Yamato remained unwavering in his resolve despite the dense mist obstructing his vision, using his wood-release jutsu to both attack and defend against Zabuza's unrelenting assault. Gato, the vicious businessman whose avarice had caused misery in the land of waves, made his spectacular entrance as the battle came to a head, his presence casting a pall over the already tense battlefield. His arrival marked the last battle between good and evil, the ultimate test of Team 11's and their allies' fortitude and determination. In an attempt to permanently put an end to Gato's reign of terror, Naruto and Sasuke silently agreed to step up their efforts and make their attacks more focused and deliberate. As they cooperated to destroy Gato's forces, their movements were a blur of quickness and agility, and their coordination was perfect. Naruto couldn't help but feel proud of his allies as the fight continued. Sakura's medical ninjutsu helped her teammates in times of need, and her unwavering determination and sharp mind made her an invaluable asset. Additionally, Yamato led the team steadily with his cool head and strategic acumen, using his wood-release jutsu as a potent weapon against their enemies. They came together to form a strong team, and despite hardship, their friendships and camaraderie remained stronger than before. But in the end, Zabuza was the one who changed the course of the conflict. His talent and guile were what made them win. He defeated Gato and his henchmen with a single, crushing blow, putting an end to their terror campaign for good. Naruto and his teammates stood triumphant, their hearts full of pride and accomplishment as the dust settled and the sun started to rise over the horizon. However, their work was far from done. After defeating Gato and freeing the land of waves from his oppression, Naruto and Sasuke focused on the next stage of their mission, securing the village's future and making sure that peace would reign in the days ahead. Driven by a common desire to see the land of waves flourish once more, they put forth endless effort to rebuild the village with the aid of their newfound allies. And their efforts started to bear fruit as the days stretched into weeks and the weeks into months. The bridge, which had previously represented oppression and suffering, was now a symbol of progress and hope, demonstrating the tenacity of the wave people. Naruto and his teammates also made the decision to name the bridge after their friend Inari, whose courage had inspired them all. This will serve as a lasting symbol of hope and solidarity for future generations. The burden of their achievements weighed heavily on Team 11 as they eventually made their way back to the well-known streets of Konoha following their difficult mission in the land of waves. A feeling of unease, a persistent uncertainty that hung in the air like a shadow, tempered their victorious return. Naruto felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest as they headed to the Hokage's office. As they described the events of their mission, Minato's stern gaze hung over them, his expression unreadable as he listened to their report with great attention. Ever the steadfast leader, Yamato stood before the Hokage with a calm resolve, his voice steady as he defended his choices against Minato's questioning. However, even he was unable to conceal the glimmer of uncertainty that danced in his eyes, a tacit admission of the burden of responsibility that hung over him. With a measured yet firm response, Minato expressed his disappointment and questioned the wisdom of their actions. He demanded accountability from his team, and his words sliced through the air like a blade, leaving no space for hesitation or doubt. Minato's words weighed heavily on them as they left the Hokage's office, clouding their victorious return. The knowledge that he had failed his sensei and his village consumed Naruto's thoughts, and he felt the weight of guilt bearing down on his shoulders. When Naruto returned home, he saw Minato and Kushina, who greeted him with a mixture of relief and worry. They demanded answers to every aspect of their mission, including the risks they faced and the battles they fought. Their questions came in quick succession. His responses appeared to satisfy Minato and Kushina, and their anxiety subsided as they concentrated on their son's safe return. The lingering disappointment in their eyes, however, was a silent reminder to Naruto of the trust he had violated by keeping secrets from them. As the days stretched into weeks, Naruto struggled with loneliness as the burden of his secret strained his relationship with his family. As they battled to accept their own feelings of inadequacy, his siblings Menma and Mito appeared to retreat deeper within themselves, their resentment brewing beneath the surface. Naruto made every effort to close the distance between them, but his attempts were always met with icy disinterest or outright animosity. Mito's mastery of chakra control and Menma's extraordinary ninjutsu skill seemed to overshadow Naruto at every turn, their achievements casting a long shadow over his own. However, Naruto was unfazed by their hostility. With a renewed sense of resolve, he threw himself into his training, hoping to gain the respect of his family and peers as well as prove that he was deserving of his position in the village. A cacophony of sounds greeted Naruto and Sasuke as they made their way farther into the forest of death, including the rustle of leaves, the chirping of insects, and the sporadic howl of a wild beast. The forest floor was always in shadow due to the thick canopy above, which created a spooky atmosphere that seemed to consume their thoughts. But despite the ominous surroundings, Naruto and Sasuke persisted with unwavering resolve. They had come to the forest of death with a strong desire to push themselves to the limit and come out stronger than before, not because they were careless. There were difficulties on their way through the forest. With the dexterity and skill of seasoned warriors, they negotiated perilous terrain, slicing through dense undergrowth and crossing swift-moving streams. From poisonous snakes to raptors, they came across perilous animals that threatened their safety while hiding in the shadows. However, the threats that were present everywhere did not deter Naruto and Sasuke. They became stronger and more resilient with every challenge they encountered, and their friendship and teamwork only deepened in the face of hardship. They spent their days in intense training sessions, perfecting their fighting abilities and methods while being closely observed by the harsh eyes of the forest. In their never-ending battle for supremacy, they pushed themselves to the limit of their endurance and beyond. However, they aimed to develop more than just physical strength. Additionally, they explored the depths of their minds and faced their insecurities and fears. They forced themselves to face their inner demons, to accept their flaws and celebrate their strengths, and they came out of each experience stronger and more resolved than before. Naruto and Sasuke started to observe a shift in themselves as the weeks stretched into months. Their movements were more fluid, their minds more focused, and their reflexes more acute than ever. They had developed into warriors in every sense of the word, sharpened by the forest of death's hardships and forged in the furnace of misfortune. However, their adventure was far from ended. They faced new difficulties and roadblocks every day, all of which helped them get closer to their ultimate objective of becoming the village's strongest shinobi. Amidst the thick undergrowth of the forest of death, Sasuke vented his frustrations to Naruto, his words bearing the weight of a burden too great for him to carry alone. In sharp contrast to the peaceful surroundings, his voice reverberated through the forest's quiet expanse, tinged with bitterness and resentment. Sasuke bemoaned, "It's like they're consumed by this curse of hatred," in a dejected tone. "My father grows more stoic with each passing day, pushing Rin and Itachi to greater heights while showing no love or affection to anyone, not even to me." As he took in Sasuke's words, Naruto listened carefully, his face solemn. He was all too familiar with the hurt of being ignored and forgotten, the sting of being judged unworthy by those closest to him. However, he was also aware of their inner strength, the fortitude cultivated by years of suffering and misfortune. "They're just being ignorant," Naruto stated resolutely, with a hint of resolve in his voice. "We can't let them hold us back. We're stronger than they'll ever be, Sasuke, and we don't need their approval to prove it." With a glimmer of resolve in his eyes, Sasuke nodded. He was aware that Naruto was correct. They couldn't afford to let other people's expectations and biases hold them back. They would have to blaze their own trail, driven by their own convictions and beliefs, if they were to accomplish their mission. "Secrecy is necessary," Naruto added in a solemn tone. "We can't let anyone, not even our own families, know what we're planning. The fewer people who know, the better." Naruto and Sasuke came to a mutual understanding and decided to continue their mission despite the obstacles that would face them. Although they were aware that their journey would be dangerous and uncertain, they were ready to confront it head-on as a team. As their conversation progressed, they began to consider Obito's impending threat and his schemes to bring Madara back to life. Naruto shuddered at the thought of Madara, a reminder of the powerful foe they would soon encounter. Sasuke stated, "We need a plan," in an urgent tone. "Obito is a formidable opponent, and if he succeeds in reviving Madara, we'll be facing an enemy unlike any we've encountered before." With his mind already buzzing with potential, Naruto nodded in agreement. To stop Obito's plans before it was too late, they would have to predict his movements and move quickly. However, they had to first collect data and evaluate the current situation. Naruto stated, "We'll need to gather intel," with a determined tone. "Find out everything we can about Obito's movements and his plans to revive Madara. We can't afford to underestimate him." Naruto and Sasuke set out to acquire the knowledge necessary to face Obito and foil his schemes with a common goal in mind. They were committed to seeing it through to the end even though they were aware that the path ahead would be dangerous and uncertain. With a troubled expression on his face, Naruto's brows furrowed as he thought about what Sasuke had said. "Yeah, Menma and Mito, they're not exempt from it either," he said, let out a deep sigh. "I've seen the way they act, the way they look down on others. It's like they're trapped in this cycle of hatred, unable to break free." Sasuke remembered his encounters with Naruto's siblings and nodded solemnly, his eyes averted. "Mito," he said, pausing briefly before continuing. She has a crush on me. It's uncomfortable, to say the least." Naruto's face flickered between understanding and disbelief as his eyes grew wide with surprise. He trailed off, thinking about how to handle the delicate situation as his mind raced. "Really? I had no idea." "And Menma," Sasuke went on, a hint of resentment in his voice. "He's drowning in his own pride and arrogance, unable to see beyond his own ego." When his brother was mentioned, Naruto's jaw clenched and a hint of bitterness appeared in his eyes. With a hint of melancholy, he continued, "And Rin. She's consumed by her own ambition, blinded by her desire for power and recognition." With a solemn expression, Sasuke nodded in agreement. His voice was hardly audible above a whisper as he muttered, "And Itachi. He didn't have the curse of hatred like the rest of them, but he had the Mangekyo Sharingan. It's a burden he carried alone, a legacy of our clan's dark past." A feeling of unease descended upon them as they conversed, a somber reminder of the difficulties that lay ahead. They were aware that if they wanted to escape the vicious cycle of hatred that threatened to consume them all, they would have to face their own demons as well as those of their siblings. A voice abruptly broke through the silence as Naruto and Sasuke stood amid the thick undergrowth of the Forest of Death, their heads spinning from learning of their siblings' hardships. Zetsu appeared, unexpected and unnerving, rising like a specter from the earth. "Zetsu." Naruto greeted the mysterious figure cautiously, his hand automatically reaching for a kunai as he prepared for whatever news it might bring. Zetsu looked at the two young shinobi in front of him, his dual-colored eyes glimmering with an unearthly light. "Greetings, Naruto, Sasuke," he whispered, his voice resonating unsettlingly through the forest silence. "I bring tidings of the upcoming Chunin exams." Naruto furrowed his brow in perplexity. "Chunin exams?" he asked again, giving Sasuke a perplexed look. "What about them?" The appearance of a smile curled Zetsu's lips, but there was something unnerving about it. "The Chunin exams are a time-honored tradition in the world of shinobi," he said. "A test of skill, strength, and cunning, where young shinobi from across the land gather to compete for the prestigious title of Chunin." It aroused Sasuke's interest. With a hint of anticipation in his voice, he asked, "And what of these exams? What do you know?" Zetsu's eyes, shining with an unearthly wisdom, flickered between Naruto and Sasuke. He told them, Iwa, the Hidden Stone Village, plans to invade Konoha during the final part of the exam, which made them shudder. Naruto's eyes went wide with fear. He repeated, "Invade Konoha," as the thought of such a grave danger raced through his head. "But why?" As he went on, Zetsu's expression remained mysterious. "It is part of a larger scheme orchestrated by forces beyond our understanding," he cryptically clarified. "But suffice it to say, Konoha is in grave danger, and it falls to you to ensure its safety." Determination tightened Sasuke's jaw. He vowed, "We won't let Iwa succeed," in a steel-toned voice. "We'll do whatever it takes to protect our village." With unwavering resolve, Naruto nodded in agreement. "We'll need to be prepared," he stated resolutely, his eyes glimmering. "We can't afford to let our guard down, not even for a moment." Zetsu recommended that they spar using none of their trump cards, such as Sharingan, Rinnegan, or any other Kekkei Genkai. Naruto and Sasuke looked at each other as Zetsu's suggestion lingered in the air, and they silently came to an understanding. They were aware that sparring with one another would be an opportunity to push one another to new limits as well as a test of their skills. Naruto nodded determinedly and said, "Let's do it," his eyes bright with anticipation. "But let's make it interesting. No holding back." A hint of anticipation ignited in Sasuke's dark eyes as his lips quirked into a faint smile. He said, "Agreed," with a challenge in his voice. I want to see what you're capable of, Naruto. Together, the two shinobi set out to find a suitable spot for their spar by weaving through the forest's thick undergrowth. As they negotiated the perilous terrain, they moved with silent grace, their senses sensitive to even the smallest change in the atmosphere. At last, they found a clearing with dappled sunlight, the ideal setting for their confrontation. A charged energy that was brimming with the promise of combat filled the air as they entered the open area. With their eyes locked in a silent exchange of resolve, Naruto and Sasuke faced each other across the clearing. As they prepared to unleash their most potent techniques, they silently started to channel their chakra, utilizing the enormous stores of energy within them. With a blaze of fire shooting from his fingertips, Sasuke used the first jutsu, sending a torrent of flames in Naruto's direction. But Naruto was prepared. Years of training had sharpened his reflexes, and he leapt aside, barely escaping the scorching heat. Naruto retaliated by summoning the wind's power, creating a whirling vortex that ripped through the atmosphere in Sasuke's direction. However, Sasuke was just as ready, and as he skillfully sidestepped the attack with fluid and accurate movements, his Sharingan flashed. Each shinobi launched a volley of jutsus with deadly accuracy and lightning speed as the battle continued. Sasuke countered with a flurry of lightning-infused kunai that crackled with lethal energy, while Naruto used clones to divert Sasuke's attention while he charged up a Rasengan. The surrounding forest shook from the power of the Titan's ongoing battle, with trees breaking and the ground trembling underfoot. Nevertheless, Naruto and Sasuke persisted in their fierce battle for supremacy, their resolve unwavering. Hours flew by in a flurry of activity and intensity, with the sky painting itself in shades of gold and crimson as the sun sank low on the horizon. However, neither Naruto nor Sasuke appeared to be slowing down, their spirits unwavering as they challenged themselves to the absolute limit. With one last surge of strength, Naruto and Sasuke hurled themselves at one another, their fists colliding in a titanic struggle that sent shockwaves through the atmosphere. The two shinobi locked eyes, their gazes reflecting the respect and friendship that bound them together, and it seemed as though time had stopped. The battle then reached its climax with a simultaneous explosion of sound and light, with Sasuke and Naruto's combined attacks colliding in a spectacular explosion that cast an unearthly glow over the forest. Naruto and Sasuke focused on the task at hand with a common goal in mind. Although they were aware that the path ahead would be dangerous, they were resolved to meet any obstacles head-on as a team. With their chakra-infused weapons colliding with a force that threatened to shatter reality itself, Naruto's mini Susanoo blade and Sasuke's mirrored counterpart sent shockwaves rippling through the air. As the two blades collided, sparks flew as each shinobi threw all of their strength and determination into the fight. Time appeared to stop for a moment as Naruto and Sasuke locked eyes, their intense stares conveying the challenge that lingered between them. They were rivals in that brief moment, as well as teammates, and each was committed to proving themselves and winning the battle. Naruto and Sasuke grunted in unison as they pressed against one another, their muscles strained under the tremendous pressure of their collision. But as they battled tooth and nail for supremacy, neither shinobi was prepared to give up. Subsequently, Naruto and Sasuke suddenly sprang apart, creating space between them as they readied themselves for their next maneuver. Together, they summoned the elemental power that was dormant within them and channeled their chakra, creating complex hand signs with lightning speed. Twin torrents of flame erupted from their outstretched hands as they yelled, "Fire Annihilation Jutsu!" In unison, their voices resonating throughout the clearing. Their jutsu's intense heat engulfed everything in its path as it swept across the battlefield, destroying everything in its path. However, Sasuke and Naruto were not so easily discouraged. They quickly called forth their Susanoo armor, which was made of shimmering chakra and enveloped their bodies in a protective shell. Their Susanoo, the embodiment of their power and resolve, took the form of a sleek and streamlined form rather than the conventional skeletal structure. Naruto and Sasuke used the power of their Susanoo, utilizing its strong defenses to protect themselves from the attack as the flames encircled them. Their armor resisted the flames, licking, as the chakra-infused structures absorbed the heat and diverted it in a harmless direction. Sasuke and Naruto weren't finished yet, though. They quickly imbued their Susanoo with lightning power, enveloping themselves in electrical sparks that crackled and flowed through their bodies like a river. They were able to move fluidly and precisely as they darted and weaved through the flames with unmatched agility thanks to the added speed boost. Naruto and Sasuke stood amid the smoldering ruins of their battlefield as the flames started to fade, their chests heaving with effort but their spirits unwavering. They realized then that they were warriors, shaped by the furnace of conflict and tempered by the furnace of misfortune, and not merely shinobi. Zetsu watched the fierce battle between Naruto and Sasuke from a distance, his presence hidden in the shadows. He created a strong genjutsu barrier around the clearing with a hand gesture, making sure that no unwanted onlookers would happen upon the scene. Within the barrier's boundaries, Naruto and Sasuke persisted in their battle with unwavering resolve, pushing themselves to the limit as their jutsus collided with an earth-shattering force. With primordial ferocity, Naruto's wood dragon jutsu surged forth, its massive form writhing and twisting in an attempt to capture Sasuke. However, Sasuke resisted being overpowered. He summoned his Susanoo with a quick motion, and the massive structure appeared all around him like a ghost of death. Its massive body loomed over the battlefield, its skeletal face serving as a sobering reminder of the power that was hidden inside. Sasuke's Susanoo launched into action as the wood dragon jutsu closed in on him, its enormous blade slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. The two jutsus struck each other with a loud crash that sent shockwaves through the air and caused the ground beneath them to tremble. Naruto, however, was not one to give up easily. He released a strong chakra barrier by using the power of his Rinnegan, the ethereal energy encircling him like a protective cocoon. Naruto concentrated his will and used the power of his eyes to absorb the lethal jutsu before it could do any damage as Sasuke's Amaterasu flames licked at the edges of his defenses. Each shinobi pushed themselves to the limit in an attempt to obtain the upper hand as the battle continued. Sasuke used the full power of his Sharingan to counter Naruto's barrage of elemental jutsus, his eyes flashing with deadly intent as he attempted to overpower his opponent. However, the effects of their conflict started to show as the minutes turned into hours. As they struggled against the limits of their endurance, sweat trickled from their brows and their breath came in ragged gasps. Zetsu's voice finally reverberated through the clearing as the sun rose to its highest point in the sky, slicing through the chaos of battle like a knife through butter. "Enough," he said in a firm, commanding voice. "It's time to call it a draw." With their bodies hurting from the strain of their fight, Naruto and Sasuke exchanged a tired look. The tension between them vanished like smoke in the wind as they silently nodded in agreement and lowered their weapons. They saw Zetsu standing in front of them, his dual-colored eyes shining with satisfaction, as they broke through the genjutsu barrier. "Well done, Naruto, Sasuke," he said, nodding in agreement. "You've both proven yourselves worthy adversaries." Naruto and Sasuke smiled tiredly at each other, a bond formed by their common experience. Their relationship as friends and teammates, which had been forged in the furnace of combat and tempered by the flames of misfortune, remained unbreakable despite the intensity of their fight.